Well, it is 7 p.m. We want to welcome everyone out here to the Highland City Council meeting. It is Tuesday, January 16th, 2024. Actually, our first City Council meeting of the new year. So we want to welcome everyone here tonight. We will begin our meeting first by having an invocation by Councilmember Kim Rodella, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Brittany Bills.
Our dear, kind, gracious Heavenly Father, we're extremely grateful to be here today, to be gathered here as citizens and as elected officials and as city staff, and grateful to be able to live in the city and to be able to raise our families here and live among the beautiful amenities that we have. In this moment, we ask you that you might feel thy spirit and be able to guide us and direct us to make the decisions that we need to make in order to improve our city and produce the best outcomes. And we say these things humbly in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
And looking over tonight's agenda, there's a couple of items that we are actually removing from the agenda just because we expect this to take a lot of time. Item number 2A, which is the training for open and public meeting training, will be moved to another date. We have also item number 3D, which is Planning Commission appointments, will also be moved to another time, as well as item number 6A, which is Campaign Finance Code update. That will also be moved to another time. At this time, we have set up apart time for unscheduled public appearances. This is time for residents to come up and address the City Council on items that are not on the agenda. So tonight we will be having a public hearing on the item that is going to be item 4A. It's a public hearing and ordinance on a text amendment for alcohol sales. So if you're here to make any public comment on that, we will be taking public comment during that time when the discussion is on that item. But there will be no other public hearings on any other agenda items. So if you're here on any other agenda item than the one on alcohol, we'd like to invite you to come up and address the City Council. If you'll please give us your name, and then if you'll keep your comments to under 3 minutes, please. So this time we'll open up the unscheduled public appearances if anyone would like to come up and address the council. Seeing none, we will now move on to item number 3, our consent items, which have, once again, we've moved consent item number 3D, and we have 3 items on consent. Then we have approval of our city minutes, meeting minutes from October 17th, November 7th, December 7th, disposal of some public property, and also an action item for our council members' board appointments. Is there any of those items that need to be pulled before we vote on them? Seeing those items, we will now take a motion.
Sure. I move that I move that the Highland City Council approve consent items 3A, B, C, E, and F as listed in the agenda.
I'll second that.
I have a motion by Scott, second by Ron. We will also move forward with the vote.
Before we vote on that, I'd just like to clarify that I was not here for the December 7th meeting. However, I have listened to the audio, and so will be able to vote on that regardless.
Thank you, Doug. So is our electronic voting up? Okay. Is everyone able to log in? Seeing we're not able to log in, we're going to go ahead and start with a voice vote. So we'll start down here with Brittany.
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Doug? Yes. Kim?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
That passes 5-0. We are now on, we've got right here pretty fast. We are on to our action item number 4A, which is a public hearing and ordinance of a text amendment on alcohol sales. We will first have a presentation by staff, a little bit about the background on this motion and ordinance change. Then Councilmember Scott Smith has a PowerPoint presentation he's put together. Following that, we will then have a public hearing, and then we'll bring it back to the council. So we'll now give some time to staff to go through the item here.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I believe I am presenting on this one. So as you're all aware, and I'm sure as many people in the audience are aware, the council has been considering whether to authorize certain alcohol sales in Highland for some time. The first formal presentation to the council was back in August of last year from the applicant MNG Highland Development. They own the Highland Mains Highland Marketplace development across the street behind Little Caesars area. They asked to amend the city codes to allow certain alcohol sales. The council considered that and eventually directed the city staff to prepare a survey to go out to residents to gather feedback. On November 7th of last year, City Council considered those survey results. Erin has a presentation that she did on that, and I believe we've included that within our staff report as well. And then last month, December 5th, we asked the council to give us direction as to how to prepare for today's meeting, with the understanding that, of course, the council is always free to change any direction. Nothing is final until the vote is taken, but to at least try to get a little more prepared for today's meeting. So that's where we're at now. As a bit of a reminder, the state law has obviously many regulations regarding alcohol sales. The two types of licenses that the council directed staff to look into were to authorize limited service restaurants, which authorize sales of beer, heavy beer, and wine, and then full service restaurants, which allow essentially all types of alcohol. Restaurant licenses under state law require 70% of gross revenues to be from food sales, not from alcohol. And they have various regulations regarding serving drinks, the number of drinks that a person can have before them, serving drinks to an intoxicated person, training requirements, and the like. They also have, under state law, spacing requirements. The definition of state law is to a community location defined as a public or private school, church, public library, public playground, and public park. For restaurants, the distance is a 300-foot pedestrian travel, so the measure from the entrance to the restaurant to the boundary of the property by the way that someone would walk, or a 200-foot map distance, so straight line drawn on a map. So here are some examples for you just to see what that kind of looks like. This is near the Highland Mains development. You'll see there's a church on the north side there. That kind of dotted line, that is a 200-foot radius. So that's the map distance. So M&G could not put a restaurant that serves alcohol in any of that kind of northern portion of their property there. I wonder, can I actually get a little drawing thing, like a mouse pointer? Does that work? Oh, well, somewhat visible. Kind of visible. So this is M&G's property. So this is the northern portion. They have proposed some offices up in there. The restaurants they're looking at were more on the southern side down here. So the church area there wouldn't really restrict it. 300 feet would go out to about here. Again, that's measuring walking distance, so walkways and connectivity. So that's how that would apply there. And a few other examples just for the council's consideration. Going to the next one. Here's our splash pad, our Highland Park that's just north of the city here. You'll see 200 feet, again, radius, hits all the way around there. This one, I tried to show the 300-foot distance. So this kind of white and red line, that's 300 feet from the corner of the splash pad there. It gets you to basically that office building just to the north. So if someone tried to put a restaurant there, not that they would, or that's the plan, but that would be a restriction. And as a final example, here's 200 feet around the library. You can see it hits the splash pad and a little bit into the property to the east here. So that's state law. Turning to our law, this is what staff has prepared. Obviously, we're trying to reflect what the council wants, so happy to make any revisions. The city's current code has two zones that have express restrictions on alcohol sales. That's the CR zone, so again, the Highland Mains project, and the town center zone. That's the Myers and Wendy's area. Across the street where Macy's is, that's the C1 zone. That does not have any restrictions. So it's just town center and then across the street. The proposed development code ordinance, that's the land use code, would remove those restrictions on alcohol sales from those two zones. And instead, we're going to move all regulation of alcohol sales to the city's business license and municipal code section. So that's the bigger section here. Our municipal code, what staff has put together is several amendments to the city's municipal code. We referenced current state law. We corrected some references there. We impose a general prohibition on any sale, service, storage, use, consumption, manufacturing, advertisement, any kind of commercial activity related to alcohol, except for what is specifically authorized in the city's code. We also add a restriction that there are no off-premise sales, so no sales of alcohol at a place like a store or a restaurant for consumption somewhere else. So you can't buy beer at a gas station and take that home. That would not be permitted. The proposed amendments would authorize limited service and full-service restaurants only. We have some new restrictions regarding what licensing would look like, what information would require. One of those is we would prohibit any person or business from being licensed if they are a managing partner or a controlling shareholder of a business that has had a license revoked for alcohol-related issues, or if they've been convicted of any violation of state or local law in somewhere else related to an alcohol license. So if they essentially are a bad actor handling alcohol licenses, they couldn't get a license here. We impose a $300 license fee, which is the maximum under state law. We reiterate that they will be expected to comply with state law requirements, and we clarified our penalties. So we have criminal penalties up to Class B misdemeanor. Those are the highest penalties that a city can impose, and also put in provisions for revocation of a license. So they can revoke their business license, they can no longer operate. We've also proposed several options. Some are in there, some are just for the council's consideration. The cities are allowed to regulate in addition to state law. You can impose more restrictions. You can't really loosen up the restrictions from state law. Some options that we have discussed are a limit on the total number of alcohol licenses. Currently, there's in the proposed ordinance a total citywide limit of 4 licenses. We can also do limits on the number of each type of license. Other cities have done this. So, for example, you could do, city will issue no more than 2 limited service restaurant licenses and no more than 2 full service licenses. We can limit the number of licenses per zone. What we propose is 2 per zone, so that would be CR, the MNG's property could only have 2 total, no matter how many restaurants they have in there. Town Center, C1, that would be an overall limit, and then still subject to that whatever citywide cap of licenses you would also have. The city could impose additional spacing requirements, either from community centers or from licensed businesses. We can propose additional hour of operation restrictions. We're not changing any of the currently existing business hour of operation requirements. So Highland City already restricts hours of operation for businesses and requires Sunday closure. Those are not being touched. The city could just impose additional ones specific to alcohol. We also can put limits on which zones are eligible for licensing. One proposal was we just call the kind of the city center area. This commercial area is that. So that would be CR, C1, Town Center, and then the 10700 project. So that's what staff has proposed. Obviously, I'm happy to answer any questions, make any modifications, or take comments. I know there's more presentations to come.
I'd like to just ask a couple questions if I
course.
could. First of all, I appreciate all the work you've put in on this, because we've had a lot of discussions now, so thank you. In your research, Rob, did you ever find an instance where any city council in Highland approved alcohol sales except at the Alpine workup to the survey that was done? There was a lot of communication and in previous meetings that alcohol sales were permitted in most of the zones except the CR zone. Is that correct? At least in the C1 zone.
Maybe to clarify,
It was permitted where they could.
it's
if they-
permitted where certain types of alcohol, where there's no restriction, and where the city has a general ban on beer sales. If there wasn't an additional zoning restriction, someone could theoretically sell liquor, the higher content stuff. So that would be for
Yeah.
C1 and any of the other commercial zones.
So I heard that a lot, people saying, well, gee, it's permitted everywhere else, why don't we permit it in the CR zone? But I think it became permitted because the state changed the liquor laws and the city did not upgrade ours to meet that. So as far as you know, there's never been a city council that's approved liquor sales.
Correct. And my understanding
Okay.
does reflect yours, where it was a city imposed a restriction at one point that likely would have covered everything, and then state law changed, and the city just didn't cover that gap.
And I'll ask staff and yourself, and maybe people, is there anyone in here that's aware of any business in Highland that's been selling alcohol except the Alpine Country Club?
I think Country Club is the only one we are aware of.
So essentially, we've been a dry city, as they call it, with an exception.
Yes, with the one exception.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Any other questions about what I have presented? Thank you.
If not, I believe Councilmember Scott Smith had put together a short presentation. At this time, we'll go ahead and we'll have Scott, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and walk us through that presentation.
Be happy to do that if we get it going. So let me just explain this a little bit and a little bit of background. Most of you know that I'm a practicing physician, and today we moved into Highland in 1989 on January 16th. So I've lived in Highland for 35 years, and with my white hair and stuff, I think you can say I'm part of Old Highland. So I grew up in North Utah County. My family settled in the 1850s. So my family have been residents here. We've watched the county grow and change from an agricultural rural setting into a more suburban. So I put together a little presentation, and this is based on my bias. I'm a physician. I've worked for 45 years with people who have what we call now alcohol use disorder. And I just have done some research, and I just want people to be aware of what happens when you start selling alcohol in your city. And it's okay if people have disagreements, and I understand all sides, but this is what I believe and why I'm going to present this. So these are some of the reasons we moved into Highland, and I'm sure a lot of people in the room here agree with this. But we moved here 35 years ago because there was a rural feel. And when we moved here, there were 5,000 people in Highland. Now there are 20,000. We like the open space, park, trails, lots of trees. We thought it was a safe, family-friendly environment. I have 5 children. We thought it was a bedroom community, and there was decreased emphasis on commercial development. Good schools. We liked the religious culture here. And there were community standards, which is Sunday closing. We had a big discussion about Sunday closing 11 years ago, and the people here voted to keep it, and there were no alcohol sales. Okay, Brooklyn. Okay, so Highland Mains. From their brochure, this is a direct quote, it says, will feature full-service family restaurants, quick-serve food outlets, various retailers and boutiques, and a large outdoor courtyard and a children's play area for community gatherings and events. So I'm going to ask 2 questions I want you to think about. 1, how does serving liquor by the drink in 2 or more of the proposed restaurants? And during the survey times, we were talking a lot of times about 4 restaurants there serving alcohol. How does that create a family environment? And 2, why do we want a commercial community gathering event, children's play area, promoting alcohol sales to Highland families? Okay, Brooklyn? Okay, here we go. So, children's playground, community gathering, that's one of the big selling points. So while I understand that the courtyard and children's playground in Highland Mains are privately owned and not public, the state code 32B-1-202 says proximity to community location is very specific about the distance a liquor licensed restaurant needs to be from a public playground. Cannot be within 200 feet, and we've just done that here. Are we having trouble? Okay, great. Okay, let's go to the next one then. Okay, so I've got a pile of research here, so I didn't put every little listing here, but it's here if people want to look at it. So the Pacific Institute for Research and Evaluation said, quote, the strong connection between alcohol and violence has been clear for a long time. but now we know that this connection also relates to the location of places that sell alcohol. A number of studies have found that in and near neighborhoods where there's a high density of places that sell alcohol, there's a higher rate of violence. So my question then again, will this development be truly safe and family friendly? Okay. So the Journal of Alcoholism, Clinical and Experimental Research, and this is authored by a couple authors you can see, they examined data from 83 neighborhoods in Minneapolis. And they said, quote, "We found that neighborhoods with a higher density of alcohol establishments had more violent crime than neighborhoods with a lower density of alcohol establishments. And two, we observed a strong relationship between density of establishments and crime for on-premises establishments such as bars, restaurants, clubs, than off-premises establishments." So Highland Maine's, when I was putting this together, there was a proposal to have perhaps up to 4 restaurants selling alcohol. Now with the discussion on the staff, it's at least 2. Let's go ahead. Study finds, research and reviews in a nutshell published the following. It says the results confirm what earlier studies have suggested. Parents who live in neighborhoods with more bars and restaurants drink more frequently and consume larger quantities of alcohol. They drank more alcohol yearly. Recovery Research Institute published, if you live in a neighborhood with a lot of places that serve alcohol, on-site restaurants, bars, clubs, this may be a risky environment for use in teens as it's associated with a greater likelihood of drinking. On-premise alcohol outlet density includes establishments that did not permit minors, was still associated with heavy and lifetime drinking among adolescents. By selling alcohol, as Highland Maine's really creating a family-friendly community gathering place. So what's a standard drink? Standard drink, alcohol drink equivalent, is defined as any beverage containing 0.6 fluid ounces or 14 grams of pure alcohol. Examples, and these are equivalent, and this, I have a brochure from the National Institutes of Health that listed this. It said 12 fluid ounces of regular beer is equal to 5 fluid ounces of table wine, equals 1.5 fluid ounces a shot of distilled spirits such as gin, rum, tequila, vodka, whiskey, etc. Utah Code 32B5304 says, a retail licensee may sell a spirituous liquor that does not exceed 1.5 ounces, that's a standard drink, per beverage, but can also dispense a secondary flavoring, allowing a patron to drink no more than 2.5 ounces of spirituous liquor at a time, which is just under 2 drinks. Okay, so let's talk about the blood alcohol content. Utah has the lowest legal blood alcohol content in the nation. We're equivalent to a lot of European countries. In most of the U.S., it's 0.085%. And you'd have to ask yourself why that is. But one drink, 1.5 ounces of alcohol equivalent, equals approximately a blood alcohol level of 0.02%. And that's dependent on your age, your sex, your size. A lot of different things affect this. Ability to multitask and track moving objects is affected. For example, you may have difficulty driving, this is with one drink, if also trying to listen to directions from a GPS or hold a conversation with a passenger. So 2 drinks, which is 3 ounces, and you can have up to 2.5 ounces legally at a restaurant, approximates a blood alcohol level of almost 0.05%, which is the legal limit. And coordination reaction time are affected. Example, may have difficulty steering or shifting. Quote, if you need to quickly slow down, stop, change lanes, or turn, you may not have enough time to do so before colliding with another vehicle. So the intersection of SR 92, Timpanogos Highway and Alpine Highway. This intersection has been consistently rated a D or F by UDOT traffic studies. The traffic from Highland Maine's development will increase the traffic at this already unsafe intersection. And so my question is do we have an updated traffic study analyzing this, factoring in alcohol sales? Because there will be people coming from these restaurants who have drank. Okay, well, drivers who have drunk 1.5 to 2.5 ounce alcohol equivalents cause even greater safety concerns. Okay, the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, which is part of the National Institutes of Health, in March 2022 published a pamphlet, which I have here in my packet. It says, for some individuals, any amount of drinking could be potentially harmful. Around 29% of all motor vehicle traffic accidents involve alcohol. The rate of alcohol-related emergency department visits increases nationally by nearly 50% from 2006 to 2014, and about 1/3 of the injuries treated at trauma centers are alcohol-related. In addition, a significant number of sexual assaults involve alcohol use. People who do not drink should not start drinking for any reason. The National Institute on Alcohol and Abuse goes ahead and concludes, quote, and all people who drink, regardless of the amount, need to be aware that critical decision-making abilities and driving-related skills are already diminished long before a person shows physical signs of intoxication. Medical News Today says researchers say that their findings suggest that even a single alcoholic drink can impair our ability to make decisions, though we're not aware of it. Importantly, because our motor control appears unaffected by alcohol, we're likely to proceed with certain physical actions under the illusion that we're making the right choice. In 2023, and this is brand new publication, this is the 21st Annual DUI Report to the Utah Legislature. It says, quote, the upward trend in arrests with a blood alcohol content below 0.08 stabilized in fiscal year 21 and 22, but showed a fairly sharp increase in fiscal year 2023. The numbers of DUI alcohol-related fatalities increased in CY 2022 for the third straight year. Alcohol-related crashes remained stable and injured persons decreased. The developers of Highland Mains have consistently used examples of Park City restaurants. Park City has a population officially of about 9,000 people. Summit County, a population of 40,000. If you put Highland, Alpine, and Cedar Hills together, there's a population of 40,000. The 2022 statistics taken from the Park City Police Department listed DUI stops and arrests, 62 total. This isn't a city of 9,000. The majority were adult males, but there were 14 adult females. There were 7 juvenile male arrests and 5 female. The question, will Highland forfeit our ranking as one of the safest cities in the state in order to become a destination for fine dining? Utah Department of Alcoholic Beverages. While licensed restaurants that serve alcohol are required to follow Utah Code 32B and keep audited records of alcohol sales to a customer are not immediately documented into a computer data bank, unlike controlled prescription drugs filled at a pharmacy. How much you drink is controlled by your servers to a large degree, and they're trained to kind of watch for people that are intoxicated. We just saw a report that was shared with the council about the Department of Alcoholic Beverages said people could have 3 or 4 drinks. I thought that was very interesting because it was against the state code. It would be relatively easy for someone who has alcohol use disorder and holds his liquor to order an appetizer and up to 2.5 legal ounces at one restaurant and then walk to another restaurant a short distance in Highland Mains and order another 2.5 ounces while eating more food, thus exceeding the legal blood alcohol content. My experience as a healthcare provider. 1, people always underestimate how much alcohol they really drink. 2, it's safest to avoid alcohol altogether if 1, taking medications that interact with alcohol, 2, managing a medical condition that can be made worse by drinking if you're under the age of 21 or pregnant or might be pregnant. So my summary is following. Research has shown that having a number of on-premise establishments selling alcohol increases the risk of violence, adults drinking more frequently and consuming more per year, and encourages adolescent drinking. Now, I know in the studies they listed bars, and we're not going to have bars, but they also listed on-site restaurants, is what we're talking about. Even small amounts of alcohol can cause cognitive impairment, resulting in more alcohol-related traffic accidents, even when people are driving under the blood alcohol level of 0.05. This is my biggest concern with the location of these restaurants and this intersection. And I'm just really concerned about accidents at this corner. So alcohol misuse increases the risk of liver disease, cardiovascular diseases, depression, stomach bleeding, as well as cancer of the oral cavity, esophagus, larynx, pharynx, liver, colon, and rectum. And it's hard to tell you how many billions of dollars a year the United States spends on alcohol-related diseases. So what about the sales tax? One of the promoting things for the survey is if we have these restaurants and things, we can make a lot more sales tax. Let me explain how sales tax works in Highland. Currently, 50% of all direct sales tax, that sales tax we collect in the city, goes into a state fund shared by all municipalities. Currently, Highland receives 75% of all of our sales tax from the shared fund. Only 25% comes from direct sales tax. The revenue from this development, while helpful, may not have as large of an impact on sales tax as was promoted during the survey. So on Sunday closing, the brochure from Highland Mains says they're not going to affect Sunday closing. But if we allow up to 4 liquor licenses in the city, I can assure you that regardless of affirmations made by developers, they will soon be telling us that they can't get good restaurants without Sunday opening. And I think we're fooling ourselves if we believe otherwise. So my question here at the end, and I appreciate your kind of suffering through this, but the repeat question I have is, do the pros outweigh the cons in the decision to sell alcohol in Highland restaurants? As a long-term citizen of Highland and a medical professional, I believe the risks, the cons, far outweigh the benefits.
Okay, we're getting ready for public comment. One of the things we need to maybe kind of go back through is the timing. On August 1st, this item was also heard before the Highland City Council. At that time, it was continued with the following instructions, that we would go forth and seek residents' input through a survey. So at that time, then we went forth. We also had an open house in September. They helped us with that, and the survey went out shortly. The survey then was completed and came back in October and was presented to the City Council in November, as Rob has indicated. In that survey result, which is also in the packet, we received back 3,423 responses, or about 28% of the adults inside of Highland. Of that, 62%, 2,119 said they were in favor of allowing alcohol in Highland. 1,304 were not. As we look at in that survey, one of the interesting things that was interesting for me, of allowing all alcohol, or what's called full service, we had 1,839 that said yes. So I took the number and said, okay, if we take the 1,304 that voted no, and then we put the 274 that said okay for alcohol, but they wanted only limited, that came to be 1,578, or 46%. So one of the reasons we're here tonight is we have moved this. We've tried to be very cautious in this decision. We've taken some time. We've tried to seek the residents. I think we've had, I don't know how many public hearings. We're now going to have another one tonight. We want to hear from you. The council has sought out, we've went through an election where it was also part of the election cycle and a lot of the questions that happened there. So tonight, there's been a lot of time that's been taken, and I do anticipate that there will be a motion to move forward, either to move forward with alcohol or not, and in some form tonight. We have continued this several times to get to this point. But with that, it is now time for the public hearing. So we'd like to invite those who'd like to come up and address the council. If you'll please come forward and share your feelings on what's going to be proposed is allowing alcohol inside of Highland. If you have concerns with that, please share your name and what your concerns are. If someone else already states your concern, please just come up and say, hey, I support John Doe, or I support Sarah in what they said, instead of just kind of keep going through, because we will end up, we have several agenda items. We actually have an item, also a closed session that we need to go through on some employee issues at the end of the meeting. So just trying to be sensitive time-wise. So at this time, we will open the meeting for public hearing on item number 4A, which is a public hearing for an ordinance of text amendment on alcohol sales in Highland. So if you'll please come forward.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Chris Howden. Jackie and I moved here 28 years ago. We live on 6000 West. And I actually don't have a comment to express or an opinion about this, but I do have a plea to my neighbors and to all of us. We love living here. These are some of the best people in the planet. And I have a confession. Jackie loves chocolate ice cream, and I like licorice ice cream. And we all have different opinions about things, and that's completely okay. So I would just plead with everybody in the room, regardless of how passionately you feel about this topic or any other topic, to please be kind and respectful. And if we beg to differ with each other, we can do it in a way and still become best friends. You don't have to be grumpy to disagree, although Jackie, if she was here, would say sometimes that's not the case in our house. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dennis Kane. I've been a Highland resident, well, a Utah County resident for 28 years and a Highland resident for 15 years. I want to say that I fully support and agree with Councilman Smith's presentation. I thought it was impressive. I appreciate the work that went into that presentation. But I want to give a little different slant on essentially some of the same figures. As I say, I've been in this county for 28 years. I've been reading the news and not unconscious for those 28 years. And I have seen a marked increase in the occurrence of impaired driving accidents in this state in the last 3 years. Like, I can't believe we lose almost a person a day in the state now to some form of impairment. Now, impairment will include medical impairment, it will include alcohol, it will include other drugs. But the bottom line is the rate has gone up dramatically. And my concern is, just like was expressed by Councilman Smith, we're going to have more accidents, we're going to have more fatalities, we're going to have more injured people if this ordinance passes than we have before. I sincerely hope it's not passed. If it is passed, I will participate with other people who are already involved in a referendum to roll it backward, and also for other issues. But I strongly encourage the council to not pass this ordinance.
Good evening. My name's Jesse Perez. I live in Highland. I've lived here for over 22 years. And I've been in law enforcement at the federal and at the local level. And I have seen what alcohol can do to individuals in terms of behavior. It's addictive. It encourages behavior that is contrary to law, contrary to moral standards, and contrary to the public interest. Alcohol has absolutely no benefit to the health of individuals. It's addictive. Councilman Smith is a doctor. He can probably attest to that. It is addictive, as most drugs are addictive. It is a drug. People sell alcohol to make money, not because it's in the best interest of the population wherein they serve the public. I would encourage you to consider the facts presented by Councilman Smith, that there is absolutely no positive value associated with alcohol consumption. We have children that are growing, we have a new generation that's coming up. They need no more exposure to the moral stress that they already face without introducing more stress into their lives. I would ask that this council reject. It's been suggested that we make exceptions. Once we start making exceptions, there is no stopping that effort to stop making exceptions. You will continue to make exceptions. You will allow 1 or 2 premises to sell alcohol. Tomorrow you will allow 4, 5, 6, 8. I encourage you to consider your vote very well. Thank you.
Thank you for having us here and allowing us to speak. So I have a couple of different points.
If you wouldn't mind stating your name for the record.
Oh, sorry. Terry German. I live in Highland. I have for about 35 years. I was on the city council for a while, and that gives me a little bit different viewpoint too, because I know that the city councils in Highland have been very, very careful in making the laws to try to keep our community like it is, to try not to get houses packed together too close everywhere. And there have been a lot of things that we had said no to, and that city councils after that have said no to because of that. So one of the things that bothers me isn't so much, I don't agree with having alcohol, but one of the things that really bothers me is that we're allowing developers to come in and say, we want you to change your laws. And developers always do that. I love developers. I'm a real estate agent. You know, I sell what they create and everything, so I have nothing against them, but I don't think that a city should make their decisions based on what the developer wants and what they want to talk us into needing. I just wonder how many of you had been approached before this about people from Highland who have said, we have to have alcohol sales. Probably not very many. And even talking about the restaurants, I don't know very many people who go, oh, I really wish we had several sit-down restaurants in Highland. It's a small community. We have lots of things around us pretty close. So it's not because the community has wanted these changes. It is because the developer is asking for these changes. And they always will. And I would, if I was a developer, I'd think, can I have just a little bit more density? You know, that's normal. And then city councils can say yes or no, and oftentimes they say no. But I'm just thinking we should base those decisions on what our citizens need and want and have been asking for, not on what a developer brings into the picture. Also, talking about the roads and the location and accidents and things like that, one other thing I wanted to mention is we're right at the entrance of the canyon, which a lot of people go up the canyon, and you've got crazy bendy roads up there and everything. It's already a little tricky when you're driving in the canyon. And so that's like an invitation to ask people who have been drinking to head up those roads. And so that's a little risky too. One more point I wanted to make is about the sales tax idea. And I know that that point's brought up a lot from developers, and I agree with what's been said about the fact that we're not going to get that much more sales tax. In fact, I believe that the net result would be more cost to us, not extra taxes, because there's cost in police work and all of that. So, okay, thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Sabina O'Hearn, and I grew up in Southern California, actually. I'd like to quickly tell you a little tale of where I worked for 20 years, down by the beach in Hermosa Beach. And it was a sort of sleepy little community, sort of bedroom, and happy families living there. And it was proposed, why don't we just have a few restaurants that have alcohol? And they did that, and they said, oh, sales tax, it'll be great. And then they started making exceptions, and then they allowed bars. Next thing you know, people are puking outside the window of my office. A woman got raped in the stairwell of my building. There were car-on-car accidents and car-on-pedestrian accidents. All of those benefits from the sales tax went to added police work, and it was a net negative, and all of a sudden the taxes were increased. I'm just saying you have to be aware, once you let the genie out of the bottle, you cannot put it back. Whatever we have here will be terribly changed if we change things, as the previous lady said, to benefit a developer as opposed to what are in the best interest of the people here. Just something to consider. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Janelle Cox, and I live in Highland. I think the presentation was excellent. There's obviously not one redeeming quality of having alcohol in our lives. Can anybody think of one redeeming point of having alcohol? Therefore, the only reason that you are proposing it is to raise money? Are we that desperate to sink that low that that's what we would do to raise more money in our city? Can we not think of other ways? We started this meeting with a beautiful prayer, and thank you. We asked God to be here, His Spirit to be here to guide us to make wise choices to improve our city. Let our actions follow our prayers. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jamie Holmes, and I think I win so far. I've moved to Highland in 1987, so is that 37 years if you were 35? So I've lived here a long time with my young family. We moved here, and now I have 16 grandkids, so I love Highland. We've loved living here. I agree with everything that's been said. The thing that I like about Highland, it is unique. And if we bow to the other things that other people have, it's not as unique as it is. We have such a unique place here. And as soon as we give that up, we're just like everybody else. And that would be really sad. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Sorry, I have a very hoarse voice. I'm Bianca Schwarz. I've lived in Highland only for 9 years, so I'm new, but I feel like just to voice someone, I appreciated your presentation, and I feel like why are we not hearing one more presentation about why we could have this development and what it could do for our community? And I am encouraged by the growth in Highland. I did not move here for a rural community. I have a mom of 4 kids. I'm a woman of faith. I stay at home with my kids, and I love our community. And we always go to the splash pad and the library, and I would love to have more space to walk around and gather. And I feel like, why aren't we seeing a presentation of what this can add to our community? I think we're getting really stuck in fear, and I understand I do not drink alcohol, and I'm not a proponent for a bar or club in my town, but I feel like, why aren't we focusing on what it can add? We're sitting in a place of othering where you're worried about family restaurants, but many of the family restaurants we already attend do serve alcohol, and we're doing okay. And I feel like we're growing in a good way as a community, and I'm just not opposed to it. So I'm just hearing everyone who's opposed to it, and I'd like to say that I'm not opposed to it. I would love the development. I think it's wonderful. I would love to gather. I'd love to have a Christmas tree lighting there. I would love to stroll around with my friends, and I think there could be really good adds to our community with smaller boutiques and places I want to go buy birthday presents. I don't want more fast food restaurants here. I think we live in such a beautiful, thriving place. So I just wanted to add that. I also was a server for 6 years, all through college. And when I had my first entry-level job, we went through extensive training about over-serving. It is illegal to over-serve. You cannot just serve and serve people alcohol. I was at the mouth of the Provo Canyon, so I served people coming for Sundance Film Festival, and I served people coming from the BYU football games. And I just think that we need to have more faith in our community, that we can coexist, that we can live together. Like, instead of putting people as the worst and the best, I think we can live together, and we already do live together. So that is what I'd like everyone to remember, that we already do live together with people who drink and who don't drink. And I understand there are some health and safety, but I don't know, I think better of us than that. So, okay, that's all I have to say.
So my name is Natalie Ball, and to address what she just said, we actually did have a presentation for, I think it was like 2 hours at the junior high from the other side. That was the developer's presentation. And the fact that we endured their presentation and their marketing materials that they sent out the same day as the survey, I have issue with that. I also have issue with the survey that keeps getting touted, and I know you put your whole hearts into it, and I appreciate your efforts. But you didn't verify that the people who took that survey were registered voters of Highland. And I think that those numbers can't possibly be true if the one candidate, the one write-in candidate who adamantly opposed liquor sales in Highland almost took Doug's seat. And he spent $30,000 on his campaign. So I don't think the survey results are as accurate as you're pretending that they are. I also have a statement from Don Ruzicka, who couldn't be here tonight. He's at his daughter's deathbed right now in Idaho, and he asked me to just read this, and I apologize for doing this. The government at all levels needs to be reminded that they work for and are accountable to us who elect them to protect our interests, the rule of law, and correct principles. Special interests in the government are not sovereign, we are, because that is the form of government we have been entrusted with to preserve our own freedom and the freedom and opportunities of our posterity. It is not about self-enrichment or personal gain for those elected to public office or the private sector. It is about doing the right thing for the benefit and protection of all. That is the message I would have communicated to the council and the developer at the meeting. So I just want to add to that. I know I don't have a lot of time. I believe in Highland. I believe in the Highland that I moved here and that I know most of my neighbors moved here for. We didn't move here because it had hip restaurants and cool shopping centers. We moved here because the lots were really large enough for our children to play, large enough for our families, our large families, to gather. We moved here because the schools were highly rated, because the community is beautiful, and it has a rural feeling, because we're connected to our neighbors, because we love the canyon access and the local trails. Highland is unique, and it's the last of its kind in northern Utah County, even in southern Utah County. They're just building like crazy everywhere in Utah County. When it was incorporated, a vision was laid out, and a master plan was put into place to protect the Highland brand and the Highland way of life. A change of this magnitude should have been added to the ballot, and that is my request to you. This should not be your decision to make. If you stand by that survey result, put it on the ballot and let the citizens of Highland vote on whether they want liquor sales in Highland, and that will be verified by registration.
My name's Thomas Ritchie. I've been here in Highland for about 28 years. Highland's great. Honestly, I really don't care about the alcohol thing. And I don't think you guys do either. Can you guys raise your hands if you drink?
I
Okay,
care.
we got one. So you're the only one that drinks. And so you're obviously wanting this to come into the city, am I right? Okay. Well, I'm curious, we can't even have a Wendy's operate normally. They don't have enough staff over here. They can't even have their, open area open. They do the drive-through. What makes you think a normal restaurant's going to succeed here in Highland? So the alcohol thing is really a means to an end, right? That's the alcohol. We're not even talking about alcohol. We're talking about trying to get a restaurant in here. We're talking about hopefully getting some money into Highland. And the problem I have with it is you guys have already missed the boat. You guys bid off on an Ivory development south of Lone Peak that was zoned for commercial. You could have put a lot of commercial in there and that would have affected my taxes. You guys could have offset some of that, but you didn't. You bid off on high density. So that's where I have kind of a problem. I don't think it's really genuine what you're doing. I also want to know how long have you guys lived in Highland? Kim, how long have you been here?
Why you address me, and then if they want to answer that.
Well, who's been here longer than 2 years, 3 years?
Well, okay. Why don't you address the question, and then they can answer when it's their time during the council time that they can.
Okay. Well, I'm just curious. So, is it my understanding?
I'm sorry, just a minute. This should be, we hear from them.
Correct.
Then we have our opportunity. It's not a back and forth.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Address
Well,
us,
Mike,
and then
I
we'll
guess the
answer-
reason
they
where
can
I'm
take
going
their
with
time
this
and-
is, it's my understanding that some people that are driving this have not lived here in Highland very long. So, I just think I would say take a back seat and think about this for a minute. Is this really in our best interest? Is it really going to change anything in Highland? Or is it going to, bring some other things to Highland that we don't want? So anyway, that's kind of my 2 cents. I don't think this really is about alcohol. I think it's a means to an end. We have very few people. Where are you going to get the customer base here in Highland? It's a predominantly LDS faith. There's not a lot of drinkers in Highland. So you're hoping that people from out of Highland come in here and go to these restaurants to really make them work. That's the only way they're going to work. And I don't think you're going to get the people in here to do that. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Thomas.
Greetings. My name is Paul Gillespie. I've lived here in Highland for 44 years. I appreciate the time the city leaders give to be of service to the citizens of Highland. Thank you. When I was in my youth, a teenager, my aunt gave me a book of information like Councilman Smith went over, and that was enough information for me to make a decision not to ever bother with alcohol. And I'm very concerned about this issue. My wife and I went to a restaurant in Orem on 800 North, near the mouth of Provo Canyon, called Mama Choose. on a Thursday evening. Very nice and busy. I noticed that there was no card listing alcoholic beverages. I asked the cashier about this. She said, no, they do not serve alcoholic beverages. They are not open on Sunday, and they are doing a thriving business. That's one. So I thought, this is interesting. I started to find other places of restaurants that are nice and that are popular, that are all over the state. Up in Logan, many restaurants are closed on Sunday and do not serve alcoholic beverages. Logan is somewhat of a tourist area. There's ski resorts and musical performances. I was surprised. And here's a list. The Thai House, Center Street Grill, Mamo's, El Fol, Morty's, Juniper Takeout, Romo's Mediterranean Grill, and the Creperie. My wife and I went to the Creperie. Very nice, very fun. It's a kind of a quaint place. Brand new in Highland, wouldn't be quaint, but it could be made to look quaint. And it would be a very fun place to go. They had savory creperies, they had sweet creperies. They were really good. And they're functioning. They're running a business that's profitable with no alcoholic beverages and not open on Sunday. Why is Logan like this? I don't get it. Orem, beside Mama Chu's, Maria Bonita, not open on Sunday, not selling alcoholic beverages. Up in Bountiful, El Matador, does not sell alcoholic beverages. In Lehigh, Edna's, Market and Grill, also catering. Now, this is what I think. Well, let me just put in one more. The Chuckarama restaurants do not serve alcoholic beverages. The Chuckarama restaurant in Logan is not open on Sunday. What I think that would work well for Highland is a popular restaurant, not necessarily a high-end, but one like these I've gone over here, like Edna's. Probably everybody here has probably been to Edna's once, and excellent food, very, very tasty, and very busy. They don't have any trouble making a profit being closed on Sunday and not selling alcoholic beverages. This is what I think. Oh, well, I'm running out of time.
Thank
you very much.
Oh, I'm Elizabeth Rice. You know me. So I consider today a really sad day because today we lose Highland. I have thought about some of my comments, but I do appreciate the ones of you who reached out to me and called me and asked for compromise. Brittany, I think you are a wonderful person. I appreciated our conversation. So I'm going to start with just a couple of the things that I want to say. And I hope you don't mind, Brittany, of some of the things that I share, because what we shared, I'm getting ahead of myself, because Scott, I really appreciated your presentation. I agree with it wholeheartedly. I had a brother that died from a drunk driver. So I don't appreciate how the developer came in and got an approval and then came back and said, well, we need this. And I'm just wondering what they'll come back for next. Still, we need to realize that less than 1% goes to our tax base. We have less debt than any other city. I've lived here for 26 years and I love here. I do want you to understand a couple of other items. R&R Barbecue no longer serves liquor because they couldn't get anybody over the age of 21 to serve it. I think that, while the development looks great and wonderful, I think you're going to have a hard time putting any restaurant in there. After Blue Lemon went out, it took, almost 2 years to put Little India in? Is that the name of it? Anyway. I also realized that, what Brittany and I talked about, you can't have it in just one section of Highland. I've been a school teacher for 33 years. You can't have, Johnny, you're going to go by one rule, and Susie, you're going to go by another. You can't do that. So I understand that. We lose Highland today. I need to choose my words carefully. We talked about 2 liquor licenses, but if it's for all of Highland, please understand the more liquor licenses you have, the better it will be for our referendum. I do, on a negative note, well, let me say this. On a positive note, I want to remind you that you do represent the people and not the developer. On a negative note, and this is negative, I want you to understand that the day we have a kid that is killed by a drunk driver or an adult, please remember this day. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ashley Sorensen. I have lived in Highland for 23 years, and I have seen Highland completely change from what it was when I first moved here. And I agree, I hate change, and I think it is sad to see it go, but I think it's something that needs to happen, and that's what happens when you live, I don't know, in a city that's growing. So I just want to say that I agree with everything that Bianca Shore said. I am very for the development. I think it is so awesome and cute and pretty, and it'll be so fun to go somewhere with my family and my family and my kids. I have young kids, and we go to restaurants that serve alcohol all the time. We don't drink, and so I really don't see a huge problem in it. And I think it'd be super fun to have nicer restaurants here. And I think the more people I've talked to, everyone says they want nice restaurants in Highland or somewhere close, because for me, I hate driving far if I don't have to. So, and especially with my kids getting older, it's kind of nice to sneak out for a little bit for a quick dinner and come right back. So, and somewhere fun for me and my girlfriends to go hang out or go to a quick lunch during school. So anyways, I just want to say that I'm for the development. And also one thing that really stuck out to me that the developer said was Highland probably will have more dessert sales than alcohol sales. And also, I think there are a lot more people in Highland that drink than people must think, because, and I think we all have our agency to do what we want to do, and I don't think anyone should judge anyone for what they want and do in their free time. So, anyways, that's it.
Thank you, Ashley. My name is Jesse Myrick. I've lived in Highland for 4 years now, and I moved here. I grew up in California, and when my wife and I moved here, we thought long and hard about the place we wanted to live. We made a lot of decisions in our life, what jobs we took, what opportunities we pursued based on where we wanted to live. It was probably one of the most important decisions we made in our young marriage. I mean, I guess I've been married for 11 years, so we're getting there. And the two values we were looking for is we wanted large lots, and then we wanted family friendly. We wanted a place to raise our little kids. And we think we found that in Highland. Highland's been awesome for us. We plan on being here for the next 50 years. So I just ask you guys to do your best to keep it that way. And we just love Highland.
I'm David Beck, and I know most of you. What I wanted to say is that we've lived here 30 years, but in that time frame, when we first moved here, they were all large lots. It was very rural. All we really had was Kohlers, and we loved it. But in the last 10 years, I have seen all of the lot sizes shrink dramatically. I've seen the character of Highland change. And in that same time frame, all of the rules that were basically standard for our city have been changed, and most of them for developers. And now we're asking for alcohol. I grew up in Virginia. I know how easy it is for teenagers and adults to find alcohol. And I really don't want it in Highland. And I really don't like the way it was done. And I too think that it was poorly done. And it's really only, if it's really for the tax, what little it would bring, then why in the heck did we spend $9 million for a stupid park? We're not short of the money. So it only has to be because we want to please some developers. And someday, American Fork Canyon's going to tap through to Park City. And I believe the state wants the alcohol here for that. Well, I do not. I do not want to live in Park City, ever. I don't even like to drive through it. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bruce Smith, here 7 years by way of Kentucky. And to the gentleman that spoke first here, I promise not to be grumpy. I'm only grumpy on days ending in Y, so you can relax. You have heard compelling arguments to keep this alcohol ban in place. I underline that word compelling, starting with Dr. Smith's presentation and almost everyone here. What I'd like to suggest, no, emphasize, if this ban remains in place, no one loses. No one loses. Not the developer, not the residents who voted in favor of dropping the ban on the survey, not these lovely young ladies who spoke in favor of lifting the ban. No one loses. That is compelling. The challenge to you, ladies and gentlemen on this council, are to present compelling reasons to lift that ban. I have yet to hear any. In fact, the scales of pro versus con are almost incalculable. There is no way you can justify the lifting of this alcohol ban based upon primarily what Dr. Smith said and everything you've heard here tonight and then some. God bless you as you ponder this deeply.
Hi guys, I'm Debbie Mon, and I've lived here for about 34 years. First, I'd like to say the Highland that many of us moved here for has been gone for 20 plus years. I mean, you know, they've talked about the development and all that. We're not the same city. We're not the same city. We don't have the same people. We don't have the same desires, needs, whatever. I wasn't even planning on speaking tonight, but the fear that I've been hearing from people coming up here that, I don't know, it just broke my heart. I mean, some people are so afraid with this, Scott, I love you. The statistics, I'd like to really see you do a thing on Diet Coke and maybe the fast food, highly processed, and put that up. You know, it's the same type of thing. We don't have a bar here, okay? A lot of that statistics comes from the open bars and where people come, they go to drink, they have no food. The people that want or agree to the alcohol thing, Smith sells alcohol. They're down the street. You know, there's alcohol all around us. If they don't get it here, and somebody, especially people with the disorder, they're going to get their alcohol. They have their alcohol. They're getting it. They're causing whatever problems they're causing. And that also the the developers, if you want to call it that, open house we had at the junior high, the policeman that got up there he said in the last 10 years, I'm not sure, it wasn't you though, I don't think. Or was it you? Okay, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in the last 10 years with the golf club selling alcohol, and they've had zero incidents. So, you know, a mature adult is not going to cause any problems. I get my 6 to 7 glasses of wine a year. That's, you know, just with my meals somewhere. And I'm happy with that. My husband doesn't drink. I really personally don't care if we have alcohol here or not, but I would love to see some really nice restaurants. I'd love to be able to go and sit down and enjoy a glass of wine, truthfully, if I wanted. My husband and I would probably walk home. We live about a little over a mile. Nice summer night, you know. But Just the fear I heard tonight is what broke my heart. You know, responsible adults, we're not talking bars, and we don't have to have bars. And it's very easy to not have bars. You know, and there's a huge difference between sitting down with your family in a nice family restaurant, like some people have, everybody here has eaten in restaurants, I'm sure, that serve alcohol, you know, and they don't drink it if they don't want it, and that's great. And that's exactly how it would be if we had it here. They're already talking about people with accidents on the corner. Well, that's without alcohol. And we're having accidents, we're having problems, we're going to have problems. I can't imagine the problems increasing with responsible drinking alcohol in a restaurant. Their licenses are at stake also, highly at stake, especially in Utah, if they serve people overly.
Thank you, Deborah.
And many more things. Thank you.
My name is Kim Greer, and I have been in this area for about 22 years. And my husband and I made the decision to move to Highland for a lot of the same reasons that everybody else. The lots, the feeling of a community, the safety, and whether we disagreed with some of the other things or not, we moved here based on the Highland values that were set in place long before me and my husband came to be residents. And so we decided to show up tonight we chose to live here. There were certain values that were already in place. And to me, I feel like I want to be here to support the people that put those in place because it means a lot to them. And it's one of the only places that we have left. So whether you want to drink alcohol or not, there's plenty of places all around us where you can do those things. So it's not about us versus them or your beliefs or somebody else's beliefs. You can find that wherever you would like to go, in your own home or a different restaurant in a different town. But this is Highlands values that we're trying to change. And why are we trying to change it? When you can have all these other things, the developer can go to another location if this one is close to them. That's not the end of their story, but it could be the end of a part of the story of Highland City. Thank you.
My name's Stephen Barrett, and everybody's talking how long I've been here. I've been here for 47 years. In fact, I was here the year before Highland became a city. And it is a great place to be. And I love the city. I just want to say that I concur with those who oppose this ordinance. And then also, I brought my brother. He's from American Fork, but he's been a two-time mayor in American Fork. And I thought maybe he could just give a different side on it. I hope he's with me. You're not going to... Anyway, so thank you. Thanks for doing a good job.
Thanks, Stephen.
I was going to say, I've been here for 47 years, and I'm only 49, so try to figure that out.
Last time I'll let him invite me anywhere.
Could you just state your name, everything?
Shoot. Let's start over again. No. The bottom line is, this is not a difficult position to be in. I've been on the council. I've been the mayor, and sometimes decisions had to be made that, in my opinion, was for the betterment of the community, even though the residents were not happy. Fortunately for me, those same residents came back a year or two later and said, thank you for seeing the future that I couldn't see. I was lucky in that respect. I, quite frankly, would be a little bit fearful of this decision. I think Highland is a wonderful community. It has cost you at times because you won't be open on Sunday, don't allow businesses to be open on Sunday, and so that has cost you some sales tax generating businesses that would not come here, have chosen to go to other cities. So you're gonna have to look at the situation. But when it comes to alcohol, I can promise you, you know what I was when you picked me up. You know what you're getting. You know the situations that may take place. And as far as my experience, they take place. Every Monday I met with my police chief, and he would go over the things that had happened. And he'd refer to where there was alcohol available, not beer, but strong spirits, and say, we had 3 fights. We spent most of the night, 3 officers were transporting people down to Utah County Jail. But you know what? We did collect a little bit of sales tax on that. I hope that this decision, which will be very difficult, I would hope that you would put the time and the effort, and I believe you have. But who do you want the city to be? What do you want it to become? That's up to you. You ran for office, you got elected to make the hard decisions. Thank you. Thank you. And I will take care of my brother outside the building. If you could, Chief, just follow me out. I'm only gonna get one shot. Yeah, I'm only gonna get one shot.
Hello, my name is Alana Mills. I've lived here my whole life, 20 years. I just wanted to say it's interesting that this came up at the same time I was in a college class earlier today about constitutional studies, and we were learning about the founders and some of the things that the ideas that they had when they were building the Constitution, and the problems that they had before the whole revolution, some of the reasons that they were having problems with England and everything. And some of the things we were learning about is the fact that they wholly supported that communities should and could create their own values and have their own set of laws that upheld those values. And it didn't restrict anyone else's freedom. It allowed communities to support the values that they wanted, and people could choose to move there and live there. And if they didn't like the communities, then they had the right to move away and find somewhere else that they preferred that had standards like them. So it was just interesting. I've heard in the past, not necessarily today, but in the past, that this restricts people's freedom because it doesn't allow them to drink alcohol. But like what we were just learning about today, if they want to go to a different city to drink alcohol, they are completely free. No one's stopping them from going to another city to drink alcohol. No one's restricting that right. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting. I wanted to share that because I learned about that today, and I respect the founders and the values that they set up. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Ingolf DeYoung. I have to apologize that I'm really busy in my life and wasn't aware this was even taking place, or that there's this discussion that's been going on, and you're saying to yourself, for heaven's sakes, we've been sending surveys out and everything else. I find myself in a very interesting position. From a professional standpoint, I have many friends that drink. And I'm in many social settings where I'm around a lot of people that drink. And I don't know that there's a fear factor for me so much. I look at your survey, and I actually, from a compromise standpoint, I like the idea of putting things up for a ballot because 29%, I don't know that that definitely does not represent all of Highland or a large percentage. Philosophically, I agree with Scott Smith's approach to things. I don't know that there's an empirical benefit necessarily to having alcohol in the city. There are concerns from my perspective, even though, like I say, I've know lots of people that drink. But I do think that there are impacts that are negative to a community that are real. I think it'd be interesting, and again, everybody's got their business, right? I own a couple businesses, and that's why I'm kind of clueless on some of this stuff, because I'm pretty busy. But it would be interesting to sit down with a developer, at least for me, and say, what are some compromises, right? How do you develop our community in ways that are beneficial? I do believe that our community has grown sufficiently to allow other developments. But from a personal standpoint, since that's part of the reason why we're here, I am against having alcohol. Thanks.
My name's Rachel Farnsworth. I've lived in this area for 9 years, and I own 3 properties in Highland, 3 homes. I have been at or viewed every single one of these meetings. I've listened to all the public comment, and I have read every single response on the survey. I think the council already knows where I stand on this issue, but I felt it important. I wasn't sure if I was going to stand up or say anything, but I felt like it was really important to stand up and tell you on the record that regardless of how you vote today, not a single one of you would ever be responsible for any death or injury related to a DUI in Highland. You are never going to be responsible for someone else's crime. That is their crime. That is illegal. That will always be illegal. It is their choice to drink and drive, and that will always be on them, and it is not on you. They can get alcohol anywhere. Highland, we say it's a dry city. It's not. It can't be. By definition, we have the country club. It's not a dry city. It's just that our laws prevent anybody else. It's hard to listen to the public comment and read how residents of this community describe those who drink alcohol as riffraff. That was used twice on the survey. And demonizing and villainizing all these people, saying that alcohol makes an environment not family friendly. Disneyland has alcohol. Are you going to tell me that Disneyland is not family friendly? I think a lot of the opposition to this has been based in ignorance, and that's just a lack of, I mean that not as a derogatory term, but just having no experience with alcohol. If you've never had a drink of alcohol in your life, then you may not notice that some of the comments or statistics shared or ideas expressed are kind of funny. They would be funny if it weren't a real issue. And then there's those who will say things like, to summarize, if you don't like it, you can leave. If you don't like our values, which were religious-based, we know that from 1977 when these laws were enacted, that they were blue laws and they were based solely on the predominant religion of this area. And when people talk about, if you don't share our values, you can leave, that's really insulting to us who are not LDS. I just want to know if there is a place for us in Highland. The citizens overwhelmingly support it. If you've taken any statistics class, there is no denying the results of that survey.
My name's Dayami Sorensen. I've lived here for 10 years, and my husband has lived here for 35 years. We enjoy Highland a lot, and are for change and keeping up with the changes that have happened and accommodating to make space for the people and the diversity that's here. I don't know your names, but I loved your comment, and I loved your comment. And I am embarrassed for some of the closed-minded and aggressive comments that have been made in assumption that I am LDS and the standards that I have and the things that I believe are not necessarily matching some of the others in this room. I do not appreciate Scott's presentation because I feel like it was one-sided and did not represent other sides of the issue equally, with the pros and the benefits that can go in and addressing other things that are a bigger issue in our communities, such as distracted driving and other safety issues. With any increase in development and growth, whatever businesses go in there, there's going to be more traffic, there's going to be more accidents. There's realistic things that are unrelated to whether it's an alcohol seller or not. I just want to echo those others. And I feel like the survey was amazing and done. I saw some of the preparation and the work that went into it. I saw a lot of information on both sides, and I felt like I was educated on both sides of the issue to make my vote counted in that survey, and I think it reflected our community, and I hope that that's remembered and that's valued and not thrown out the window just because of the majority of the people in the room tonight.
Ben Cahoon. I'm a 28-year resident of Utah County, 21-year resident here in Highland. I echo the few that have come up and given an alternative view here. I think to have Councilman Smith take the bully pulpit and give one side of the argument, I think was sort of disingenuous here. You got to see both sides. I agree that some of the insinuations are sad and insulting. I'm a business leader, so I run a company here, an AI company that's partnered with Mayo Clinic, with the largest veterinary health clinic in the world. We built that from scratch right here in Highland from my office in Hidden Oaks. I have gone to hundreds of business dinners around the world and the country, and people drink responsibly. And to insinuate that that's not the case I agree is sad. Literally every doctor that I've been to at Mayo has responsibly had drinks. I think we've heard a lot about principles here tonight, and there's a couple that I'd like to bring up. Free agency. We do not have the right to morally force our morals on someone else, right? I've never had a drink. That's my choice, and I think other people should have a right to drink, and they can get it anywhere. I received a lot of mail from probably each of you on, and you can just go through the bullet points: conservative, low taxes, small government. Well, this is your chance to live up to that, right? I don't want the government, deciding this in terms of choosing who's win. I agree. Another principle is honesty. We have it in at the country club. The Macy's, everyone in the Macy's can have alcohol and sell alcohol. They choose not to. Like, how do we have something that is there but not across the street? It just doesn't make any sense. Freedom. Like, we do not regulate the sale of sugar. But as Dr. Smith would agree, diabetes is probably killing more of us than probably alcohol. He could probably give the stats on that. Safety. I guarantee you we have more alcohol coming out of the canyon than going up the canyon. And I agree, if we talk to the police, I guarantee you get people off their phones, and that's going to make more of an impact on people's lives and driving. I think the survey was misleading a little bit because we already have alcohol, and I agree 100% with everyone who's come up here that said you should represent the people. The people have spoken 62%. I mean, it's pretty clear. Thank you.
Tyler Rippey. First of all, City Council and those who were previously on the council, I'd like to express my appreciation and congratulate you on the amazing progress that has happened in this city. I've lived here 12 years in Highland, but in Utah County for about 23 years. And I've seen Highland develop and become a better place to live and a better place to raise your family. The new park, amazing. I mean, there's nothing better. Council members, I would like to remind you right now, you have the opportunity that you won't be able to take back to allow a new development that could benefit future families and future generations. If we put in more fast food, if we put in like lame strip malls, that's what's going to be there for our kids or for future generations. If we put in something that's really great and work with a developer that has a vision of something that would make this community better, I think we need to get behind that. To the newly elected council members, I attended the debate. I felt like, I'll call you out by name, Doug Courtney, Brittany Bills, you represented that you would represent the desires of the community members, and I think that was expressed in the survey. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Darren Young. I represent the developer here, which is a title I'm seriously reconsidering having sat through this. But I want to apologize to all of you, everyone here, because I think I clearly was naive in approaching this project without considering the emotion that this would create in the community. I genuinely, I didn't anticipate that, and that falls on me. That falls on me. Like, and it makes me sad that it has caused tension and contention in this community where I have dozens and dozens of friends and family. And I also want to apologize to the extent anyone feels that the way in which we approached the planning, the entitlement, the approval for this was, the advertising was underhand, was misleading, was deceptive. I'm sorry. That was not my intent. And so to the extent that came off that way, you have my genuine apology. We heard some folks indicate, you don't represent the developer, and it got me thinking, who do I represent? And my genuine desire is to represent the people, to represent the community. I think clearly folks have had a bad experience with developers historically. You talk about, oh, the developer did this. And the first project we planned here, I think it would have been, the community would have looked at it in the same way you're looking at, the project over by Lone Peak. It's like, just another thing. They threw it up. It's a bunch of fast food drive-thrus. It really would have been just another project, and no one recalled it. And our motivation for changing, it was not, I can tell you straight-faced, it was not money. The only motivation for changing was the conversations we had with residents and community members who said, we want something different. We want something special. Can you do something better than just fast food? And it got us to scrap everything and go back to the drawing board and redesign it with the intent to do that, to create something better. And as a part of that, we then had these restaurants saying, yeah, we wanted dozens, lots and lots of restaurants. I understand the appeal that some are saying you're not going to get restaurants here. That's not been my experience. I've seen many, many restaurants come here and say, we want to serve Highland. And some of those said, yeah, we want to, but in order to do our type of restaurant, this is what we're asking for. And that's the request that I then came with that started this fun little exercise 9 months ago. So in closing, I'll just reiterate, I want to do what this community wants. And regardless of how you vote here, we will do our level best to create a project that enhances this community. I would love to continue the conversations with anyone to talk about how we can do the best we can with what we've got, with the rights and laws we have, to create a project that has a meaningful impact for generations here. Thank you.
My name is Delisha Mills, and I just wanted to share that my decision to not want alcohol sales in Highland has nothing to do with fear or judgment of other people. It's what I would like to promote as a community, and that's why we have city laws that are different than the federal and state laws, is because it allows us to be unique, and it allows us to attract and keep some of the problems at bay. You're right, you can't legislate what happens in people's homes, but statistics do not support that alcohol increases the betterment of the community's safety and the environment. And that is really what the city council is here to do, is to promote the community and safety of the community around them. And so I would respectfully ask you to do so, and I would reiterate what Scott Smith presented, and it was nice to be able to have a presentation with statistics from the other side, because I'd heard the side to have the development and the liquor from the previous meetings. Thank you.
My name's Laren Harley. I'm going to talk a little louder to make sure everybody can hear me. I have a question for the developer. Are the restaurants okay not being open on Sunday? They are? Okay. The people that live in Highland that feel like they're not welcome, I apologize for if you feel that way. There's an old saying when I was a kid, what you say is what you are. And so if somebody's saying that it's not calling you names or whatever, just keep in mind what they say is what they are. You know what I mean? So anyway, hey, Highland, the issue, I don't know, is alcohol, non-alcohol. If anyone's ever taken a statistic class, you know that surveys are inherently flawed. Like a survey can be made like one way or another way. The survey I think we had was okay, but it didn't have any follow-up questions with the survey that we took, which I thought was, if you ask some follow-up questions on the survey, will you be buying alcohol here? Do you drink alcohol currently? If you do drink alcohol, are you for or against this? I've talked to some friends who do drink alcohol. So, and they said, hey, on the one hand, sure, be whatever. To have the ability to go get some alcohol close by, be fine. It is no inconvenience, though, quite frankly, for us to drive 5 miles to Mountain Fork or to Lehigh. They were like, we can take it or leave it. I will say it is nice to have a little corner of the county that doesn't have alcohol. I mean, it's kind of nice. Now, I don't know. Can Macy's sell alcohol currently? They can't, because someone said they could. That's not true. So they can't currently sell alcohol. I'm going to say this in closing. If you're going to vote for this thing, go hardcore. Seriously, either vote no or go all the way. Because if you don't go all the way, nobody wants to go to a restaurant and say, hey, bring me some caviar and a Coors Light, a Bud Light. They're going to want, if they're going to go to a fancy restaurant, they're going to want, some wine with their cheese. You know what I'm saying? So this decision is kind of difficult, isn't it? Because you can't go, oh, let's just go soft. Because what restaurant's going to go, hey, if you're not going to serve a mixed drink, just beer, what's the point? So if you're going to vote alcohol in the city, go all the way. Honestly, if you're going to think that beer is going to attract a restaurant, a fancy restaurant, probably not. Anyway, thank you for your vote. Thanks for not your vote, but thank you for.
Mayor, would you mind if I read a comment in that I just got via text right before the meeting from a resident?
Why don't we have this young lady come up and speak, and then we can have that.
Thank you.
My name is Sabrina Mills, and as I was listening, the thought just kept coming into my head about all the teenagers I've seen. As I was previously homeschooled, but I did go to Lone Peak for a few years to do concurrent enrollment classes through UVU. And as I was there, I could tell that a lot of the teenagers there weren't really firm in what they knew. They didn't really know themselves. They were insecure, and they were trying to find something that they could hold on to with other people around them. And I just think if we let alcohol into Highland, it'll make it so much easier for those teenagers to then be able to find ways to be less than they could be, instead of us trying to build their moral. And I just think that if the teenagers find ways to get the alcohol, no one will be growing up as we thought. and things will go so downhill that there will be no way to go back to what we used to be. Thank you.
Okay, Brittany, you mentioned you've had, if you can state the name, it needs to have the name stated. If you could read.
Yeah, so this is just a message I got right before the meeting. This is from Lowell Nelson, and I'll just read it exactly as he wrote it. I surveyed people in my subdivision. Of the 20 we called, 6 answered. 4 had returned the survey, and 2 had not. The 2 homes were opposed to alcohol sales. Not a big sample, sorry. I think the best path forward would be to put the question on the ballot and let voters decide. Proponents will argue that the developer will walk away, but if the council approves the measure, citizens will do a referendum, which will put the council's decision on hold anyway. Sorry, I cannot be there tonight to speak. Consider this my speech.
We would recommend if others, if you had it, it's better to have it emailed into the staff, and then we can put it in the record that way if it's been emailed. Is there others that'd like to come up and make a comment?
I'll keep this short. My name is Christian Mills. We've been in Highland almost 25 years, so kind of in the middle of what a lot of people have been saying. I like to just concur what Scott Smith presented with what he presented and what a lot of people have said. I think the values in Highland, I love the values in Highland. That's the reason I fell in love with the place when we moved here, is what we've got. I'm really saddened also that the standard of living that I've chosen to live has now been called fearful and hateful. What are the other words? Closed-minded. I'm really saddened to that people are calling my values those kinds of things. So I just hope that you would consider those who came to the city for the purpose of raising families, protecting kids. That's not out of fear that we don't want this. I want to protect my kids. I've got 11 kids, 10 of them at home. I don't want them going out driving around with people who could potentially be impaired. I'm not saying everybody who drinks alcohol is going to go driving impaired, but there's a higher risk if it's more readily available. So thank you for what you're doing, for hearing us.
Hello, my name is Dexter Farnsworth. As you can see, I'm not of drinking age, everybody, so just don't take my opinion on this. But as someone who goes to Lone Peak, I find that people will get their vapes, they'll get their drugs, they'll get their alcohol. It's not going to affect us if we have some restaurants open in Highland that sell alcohol. I'm not going to go to a restaurant if I want to get my alcohol. I'm not going to be like, waiter, please bring me a margarita. That's not going to happen. I'm going to get it from home. I'm going to get it from a friend. It's going to be either stolen or from a parent. All right? Okay, look. It would not be in any good situation for me to acquire these items. And so I just want to iterate that opening a couple of restaurants that do serve alcohol in one area of Highland will not be affecting underage drinking and driving, and it will not be affecting how the laws are broken or where the laws are broken. I mean, there's a liquor store 13 minutes from here. It's not like selling beer, wine, liquor in a couple of restaurants where it's going to be limited and specifically prohibited above certain amounts, where patrons are specifically watched and kept under surveillance during their drinking, will be a lot safer of an environment than at home or up the canyon or in public places. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, David Lewis. Moved here 26 years ago with my family and now raising my own family here. I I can tell you that having alcohol in this city and being able to go to restaurants with my family to those very establishments will not change the way I raise my kids, will not change the way that they are going to perceive alcohol and the consumption of it. We don't consume it in our family, but that does not change the restaurants we go to. We love and embrace all those with different belief systems. And, you know, I do believe that, I know that surveys are flawed, but I do believe it speaks for the people, and I believe that you guys also speak for the people. And I support the sales of alcohol. Thank you.
Good evening, council members. My name is Isabel Dibb, and I'm 16 years old. I've lived in Highland for 2.5 years, and I came to the previous meeting where alcohol was discussed in August, the very first one, and listened to the developer's presentation, the 3 hours of public comment, and I read all the mail that's come to my house about the candidates and the alcohol law, and I've participated in a debate with some other youth about this alcohol law. But I just want to say that Highland is not a democracy. Our cities aren't a democracy. We're ruled by their city council and the rule of law. And changing the law and zoning to help benefit big businesses is not what our rule of law is meant for. Think of all this consideration has been made for the alcohol law, for this development to be put in. All this consideration is being put into whether the zoning should be changed for the Longhorns Farm. But meanwhile, small businesses of the people here, like Alpine Home Food Storage, they're small. They're not going to change the zoning for something like that. So our rule of law needs to be remembered to help protect all people. And even if a few licenses are permitted for the city, say there's 4 licenses permitted, that's still not going to be fair because the people who pay the most are going to be getting those licenses. And it'll seem fair, but they're going to be the ones who are having the most influence and power over people. And more people will be coming into the city with this development. I know this is about alcohol and not the development, but really the development's what started it. And people from other cities will be coming to Highland, and it'll be getting busier around that area. And the people of Highland won't be the only ones benefiting from it. Other people from other cities will be coming. And it's good to be peacemakers and try to arbitrate this fairly and just see if it works. But really, once this alcohol law is passed and we let it in, it's not going to be able to be taken away. People can't just take down their restaurants. The safest thing to do is not let it. And the young people of the city will also be harmed from it. Think of all the teenagers in the city who are maybe a bit irresponsible and rebellious. I mean, have you seen the haircuts the boys here wear? It's going to, alcohol is a toxin and it's so dangerous, and it's easy to get false IDs. I've heard my science teacher talk about how she didn't drink alcohol, but she got a false ID to get into a bar with her friends when she was a teenager. And I have a friend who was a server at a bar, and she had false IDs, and her more experienced servers told her to just ignore them and let the people buy the alcohol. And we don't want this to turn into Salt Lake City, having drugs and armed guards needing to be outside our stores. And this is not an issue about religion. The people on the side of this haven't brought up religion. It's the people on the side of bringing in the alcohol law. This is about the safety and future prosperity of Highland. Thank you.
Thank you. By the way, Isabel is on our youth council. You've been on for 2 years, is that right? And so we appreciated her services. She's been there on youth council. So. Are there others that'd like to come up and address the council? Come on up here, Catherine. We'll take your comments. After you're done, we'll decide if we wanted you to come up.
Ladies and gentlemen, while Catherine is coming up, could I please just remind you to please sign the attendance sheets, especially those who spoke tonight, so that I make sure I have your name right for the minutes. Thank you.
That's from our city recorder, because it makes her, when she's trying to put things down, it makes it a little easier what the names and everything were, so.
Yeah, just put KS for me, okay?
Okay, Catherine.
All right.
State your name.
Oh, Catherine Schramm. And I do have understanding for what you're going through in this discussion. And because I served for 2 4-year terms back to back, and we wouldn't let it come in. And I remember some other people wanted to do the same thing that's proposed from these builders on the other corner, on their corner, and it never did come to be. Everybody in the community said, oh yes, we want beautiful sit-down restaurants and we want to go special places for birthdays or whatever, and it never came to be. And but there is a clock on the corner of by the pizza place and stuff, and that is the only thing that I can see that is still here. And all of their ideas went kaput. Anyway, I don't really know what I'm going to say, but I do believe that we have free agency, or we should, but a lot of people don't know how to use that agency, and the rest of us suffer. People get hit in the intersection over there, close to the Four Corners, you know, and they don't drink or anything else, but somebody else is speeding through the intersection and they don't stop, and they hit until they hit my friends. And I don't know how you can stick up your nose at what Dr. Smith presented. That's drug addiction. Actually, alcohol is a drug. And there are many studies that have been done, and I didn't come prepared to quote page and paragraph. But I have to look at my kids. Out of 7 of them, 1 is sort of an alcoholic, and her family's very sad, and I'm very sad that she's that way too. But they think they can break all the laws, not just drinking too much and going out and getting in their car and driving off and hitting somebody. That doesn't always happen, but I think you have to take into consideration that any laws you make here, any decisions you make here, there's always going to be somebody that's going to break it and to kill somebody else who doesn't drink or anything like that. And I think things are getting so many of us in the same in the same area, it's going to get even worse. And I guess I'm done. I've been here for 52 years, actually.
Hi, my name is Carolyn Lambert. I live in the Twin Bridges, North Beacon Hill area of Highland, where my family has resided for more than a decade. But I have family who have lived in Highland and Alpine for much longer. I appreciate your dedicated devotion and all you do for our city, and I am sure that you want to do what is best for Highland. While I'm a Utah native, I have also lived in California long years, Virginia and Texas. We moved to Highland for what it is, not for what it isn't. We love the community feel, safety, and sweetness that we have found here. I hope that no one feels unwelcome here. We're grateful for diversity and for all that everyone brings and will bring to this community. Still, as 3 of the 5 adults in our home were not able to submit our votes on the survey due to limited availability and technical struggles, which I am sure may have impacted others, not a few, I hope to communicate our feelings on the matter. I believe that Councilman Scott Smith's comments were astute and deserve to be well considered to those of others and encapsulate the thoughts of many. I do have a few thoughts, though, beyond the research and details and data that I have done, but I won't share in the interest of time, but rather a few general ideas. Certainly, there must be upscale restaurants that are willing to open without full-service alcohol offerings. By definition, establishments that offer beer, wine, and other liquor, which I believe requires a bar license. Indeed, this limited standard seems to be the norm in Utah. Currently, per statewide law, Utah allocates one bar license per 10,200 Utahns, and they're difficult and likely costly to acquire. Still, as has been mentioned, there are many restaurants in the area that residents may patronize that do serve alcohol and quite close by. Even so, for those who desire to eat in high-end restaurants, it's often more of a destination experience. Additionally, contrary to what the developer has worked hard to convince Highland residents to believe, I would venture that other refined restaurants who would be willing to locate here would yet in a well-thought-out and deftly designed space, considering the location and potential clientele such a development might offer. I understand that Little India has committed to come to already existing restaurant space in our city, presumably without laws that permit alcohol here. We love and eat regularly at Peak Thai. I hope they survive. I don't believe they serve alcohol. Recently, more casual but tasty offerings have located in Highland, Cubby's, and Jurassic Tacos, and others. There are countless fine restaurants, eateries, and cafes in Utah that do not serve alcohol, and many as well with limited service. A well-designed, well-attended, and potentially more lucrative development that caters to its client base and brings in healthy revenue without the often out-of-control and sometimes thoughtless development strategies in crowded surrounding towns is both possible and preferable. 2, wouldn't a community gathering space and dining and shopping destination that is more unique than those that exist in surrounding towns be inviting and appealing, and perhaps even more widely enticing and attractive? Clearly, there are more and better options than the 2 recently proposed by the developer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Hare. I've lived in Highland for 10 years. There are certain things that are important enough to stand up and say an opinion on, and this is one for me. So I just want to go on the record that I do oppose the alcohol coming into our community. And one of the biggest reasons is because I am one of the people who moved here to Highland because of what it is and what it has been and the values that are here in the community. And I feel like everybody who is here knows that about Highland. And everybody who is here in Highland wants to be here. The alcohol issue wasn't enough to keep people from moving into this community. People are already here without it, happy in our community. And I feel like this is such a huge issue that's dividing our community. And I don't see the clear, compelling reasons why we're going to continue to move forward with this when we've been doing fine without it. And I would like to see things stay how they are and have us all continue to live happily the way we have been without the contention and division that this is bringing into our community. Thank you.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Wesley Warren, Highland resident for a few minutes. Doesn't really matter. A year, 30 years, it's not that big a deal. I almost didn't come up. Lots been said, and I've been happy to listen to it. I do want to apologize to the mayor, to Brittany. I was a little critical early on in the process. I thought that the council should have been more decisive, more, just do what you were elected to do. And that was wrong of me in retrospect. I feel like this whole process has been really thoughtful on the council's part. And kudos to the city for pulling off what they've done. I learned a lot. And early on in this process, it was really easy to feel the stings of certain comments. And I think without this deliberate process, I wouldn't have had a chance to seek to understand the longer tenured residents of Highland. And I've spent the last few weeks trying to reach out to whom I could and going to the Highland Historical Society meetings and reaching out to residents it has taken every surly, grumpy, bullheaded, long-term Highland resident to make what Highland is. And I might, I disagree with most of them. I'm in favor of this development. I'm in favor of allowing alcohol sales, but I appreciate the points of view that I've been exposed to, and I've been so impressed with the youth that have come tonight, and I've seen it in other meetings, and even friends of my sons that know about this issue, and they've all been so eloquent and thoughtful. I'm really encouraged with the direction that Highland is going. I know that the council probably has a pretty good feeling for what the majority of Highland wants moving forward as far as this issue goes. I didn't really feel like standing and addressing any of the bad information or bad statistics or whatever, because I'm really just concerned with kind of preserving the kind of Highland that we love, and I think that moving forward, I know you guys well enough. I have a lot of trust in the council and the process. So, thank you.
Thank you, Wes.
My name is Deanna Perez, and we have lived here 23 years. One of the main reasons that we came here, we have lived out of the state for a long time, but one of the reasons we chose to live in Highland is because of that family feel and also the rural feel. I was very sad to see how the rural feel is going away. I have been against the dense parking that we have in our city. I wish we could do more about that. It's very discerning to go to the store and not be able to find parking. I've even talked with people who park at the very end of the parking lot and they've still got hit by other cars. I'm against bringing alcohol into Highland. I was very sad to see Blue Lemon close. And I'm sad to see how Highland didn't rally around Blue Lemon to try and keep them to stay. And now that we're getting Little India in, I hope that we will do that. I hope we will take our families there and have dinner there, and we'll invite our meet friends there and things like that. We have a lot of places to eat already in Highland. It's too bad we can't think of some other businesses to bring in to our city besides eating and grocery shopping and dentist office. I've never been to a place that has more dentist offices than in Highland. It's just amazing. So I do reiterate, I'm against the alcohol. I think we can come up with something better and that could still improve our tax base. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else? Seeing none, we're going to go ahead now and close our public hearing and bring it back to the council for some discussions. If it's okay, council, I'd like to invite Chief Williams to come up, our police chief. I know you kind of put made some comments, but a lot of times we've been worried about safety. If it's okay, we'd like to ask some questions on public safety. Chief, I think at the community, where we had our community meeting in September, there were some comments you made about the safety of, you haven't had a lot of instances coming out of, we have a current user at this time in Alpine Country Club that was grandfathered in. Correct. That you had not had in the last 10 years. I guess my question is that coming out of just a Highland Lone Peak, or would that take in the Utah Highway Patrol also if they'd pull over anyone or things of that nature?
So what I have access to are our records.
Okay.
I don't have access to the Highway Patrol's records.
So share with us what would be your concern of us passing an ordinance to have alcohol, and would you see that this would increase our public safety concerns or costs?
So I can't speak to the costs. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion tonight about the effects of alcohol and the effects that it has on the awareness and the reaction times that individuals may have while they maybe consumed alcohol. And physiologically, we're all different. alcohol affects individuals differently. I mean, what may affect me may be different than what may affect Council Member Bills or, Council Member Campbell. It's all different. I guess for me, I can only speak to the experience that I've had in my 29 years now as a law enforcement officer. Alcohol does affect reaction times. It does impair individuals' ability to make decisions in a timely manner, and especially when we're operating vehicles, because that's typically when we deal with them for the most part. I mean, we do get calls from time to time to fights that involve individuals that have consumed alcohol or other drugs, but we mainly deal with them in our communities with individuals that have been behind the wheel or that might be driving. And we talk about the impaired ability to make decisions or be able to multitask, if you will. Dr. Smith's presentation, I think, went into some of that and addressed some of that. And that's what we do see is the ability to make decisions while you're driving or listening or changing the radio station or having a conversation. Utah has, within the last 4 or 5 years ago, reduced the breath alcohol content to 0.05. And with that, we've seen an increase in enforcement where people have been arrested for DUI while operating a vehicle.
So what you're saying is because they lowered maybe than what the standard is, it's
Right,
causing more, it's causing the DUI to go up because you've lowered the
Correct, because that threshold has been lowered. Wherein somebody may have not been considered impaired or may have a lesser breath alcohol content or blood alcohol content, may not have been arrested in the past. Typically, the officers, when they're doing a DUI investigation, that is the last thing that they check when they do those DUI investigations is the breath alcohol content. What they're looking for is the impairedness of the individual that they're speaking with or that has been driving. And that's usually done through a myriad of tests. And we've all seen that on TV or, on the side of the road, the officers that are conducting tests, sobriety tests. There's other ways to tell if an individual is impaired rather than to have them just blow into a machine, if you will. It can tell you the breath alcohol content. In my experience, and again, this is my experience, I'll speak to my experience. Establishments that we're talking about, and I'm just going to reiterate what I talked about in our meeting at the junior high, was establishments as such. And you can, I think, Mayor, you spoke with a trooper that lives, Utah Highway Patrolman that lives in your area. We don't typically see individuals leaving those establishments that rise to the limit of impairment. That's not to say that it doesn't happen. That's not to say that it won't happen if the council decides to accept this type of establishment to come into the city. But in my experience, those are not the types that leave the establishments impaired.
So since we've had this item being discussed for so long, have you talked to any other police chiefs or other departments about what their experience has been, either when they've added alcohol or what they're experiencing with the alcohol? Has that been a discussion?
Not specifically, no. But again, I think, I'm not sure where Mapleton is, but I think I'm the only chief in the county that has limited alcohol sales in their city.
That's what we've understood as Highland in Utah County is the only. Now, does Alpine allow alcohol? Because that's probably been a question we've.
I don't know the answer to that question.
They're not alcohol. Yeah.
That I will tell you, there's been some questions even amongst their mayor if they do or don't. They were looking into that. So
they have
any
reception
questions,
centers.
Council? Is there any questions that we have with Chief Williams? I mean, we appreciate the reason I brought you up is because we had you kind of already chime in, and there'd been some things, and there's been concerns about public safety. For me, that's probably okay. What's our safety? Are we with the community? Where are we making more safe? And you mentioned I have talked to a couple of times to a highway patrolman that lives in my neighborhood. When I asked him, 75% of those that they're pulling over that they would classify DUI was actually prescription drugs or drug related versus the alcohol. When I asked him, are you seeing a lot coming from restaurants? that officer, Emery Calkins, he says, no, that's not where we're seeing them from. It's not saying never. He's saying it's not ever coming, but that's not frequently where we're seeing the issues are coming from. And so I'm just trying to understand from the public safety side, there were comments about the cost. There's been comments about safety issues. I just want to make sure we're understanding it.
Yeah, I think, I've given you my comments. I'm not sure if you need any clarification on that. I think it's fair to say that we probably see within our department as many individuals driving impaired that have taken prescription medications or some other substance that would impair their ability to operate a vehicle safely as we do alcohol.
Can I ask a question here? Given the number of impaired, let's say DUIs in Highland compared to American Fork, do you know what those statistics are? American Fork has restaurants that serve alcohol. They're twice the size we are. What are those statistics? Do you know those?
I don't have those with me offhand. I can find those out, but I don't have them.
Yeah, my understanding was that we had more in Highland than they had in American Fork, but that would need to be confirmed.
When you're pulling people, are they coming out of the canyon, and where usually? I mean, are they on the Alpine Highway? Are they coming on a SR-92 coming out of the canyon? Are they going up in the canyon? Where are you seeing your DIs?
I think it's fair to say we see them all over. Now, let's take into account the volume of traffic that travels across Timpanogos Highway and up and down the Alpine Highway, both north and south, as we head into American Fork and into Alpine. Obviously, those carry a higher load of traffic, so we're going to see more interactions with individuals that may be impaired on those roads than we would in your regular neighborhood, let's say 9600 North or 10400 North.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Chief.
You bet.
So, Council, I think there's been some questions about what's the benefit, and I think it'd be interesting to see from each of the council members maybe what you see. Maybe ask some questions, or what your thought process is on this, so the public understands why you're coming to that decision and how you came to that.
Mayor,
yeah?
Could I ask a couple of questions of staff before I want to make comment? Rob?
Yes.
Could you please speak to why this was a survey versus something that was on a ballot for residents?
Yes. So, for better or for worse, under state law, cities and other local governments are not permitted to just put items on a ballot. There's very limited things you can put on a ballot: bond, telecommunication, internet service, and a couple other very limited things. But generally, under state law, cities cannot just add a question to the ballot. I've had many cities desire to do so, but unfortunately, it's just not permitted.
Thank you. And David, welcome to Highland.
Oh yeah, David, first meeting.
Thank you.
We had
Happy to be here.
Yeah, what do you think so far?
It's great.
It's a good time, right? Yeah. I was just wondering if you could clarify, for example, if we have a restaurant that brings in maybe $1 million of revenue, how much does that generate for sales tax for the city of Highland?
I may need a minute to do the calculations, but the numbers that Scott gave in his presentation are accurate. That the way that sales tax works in Utah is that 50% of the point of sale comes back directly to us. 50% of it goes into a statewide pool and then is distributed to the different entities based on their population. With the makeup of Highland City, the average is about 75% of our sales taxes come because of our population, and about 25% from point of sale. So any beer sales would follow that same thing. So basically 0.5% of that 1 million would come directly to us. And the other 0.5% we would get a little bit of it back.
So $1 million restaurant would generate $5,000. Is that about right? Yeah, that's what Highland's going to get. I mean, I understand that, okay, out of the $1 million, $10,000 will be a local tax, but half of that goes to the state pool. Half of it would stay in the city, which is $5,000. And it had come up earlier about different restaurants. I would guesstimate that if it was a full service restaurant, they're going to maybe do $2 to $4 million in sales. If it happened to be an Olive Garden, which I don't think we're going to get, the sales would be I know. I only can hope. That's been a joke amongst the councils, the Olive Garden thing. But I would guesstimate just, I know Darren has kind of maybe stepped out, but I think we're looking at maybe about a $2 million sales. And so that's the total sales. We're assuming now if alcohol, I don't think it's going to also, to me personally, alcohol is not, I know there have been comments about financial things. I don't believe this is a financial, thing. Now the restaurants as a whole will generate, per $1 million in sales, we get 5,000 and then we send 5,000 out. And so based on what all the restaurants, do we get a little better restaurant with them doing alcohol versus a quick serve? My estimation is a quick serve will do about 1.5 million, and maybe a full service could do between 2 to 2.5. So you can kind of figure we're not talking a huge thing. Darren, I'll let you kind of come up since you had some things on that you have some things on what you're looking at sales.
Mayor, before he comes up, let me just, while we're talking about the sales tax portion, the police department does receive a portion of that each year from the state that's put into a fund. Typically from Highland, we average anywhere, and it depends on the sales across the state, but being a part of that pool, they call it a beer tax fund that's put back into law enforcement to be able to enforce DUIs. And so we roughly get anywhere between $11,000 and $15,000 a year, depending on the sales that's taken.
But that's not necessarily localized sales. That's shared amongst the state.
That's part of that shared pool.
I believe there's a formula similar to the general sales and use tax for that beer tax that's similar based on population and point of sale.
So Darren, just because now tonight's decision is not just about M&G. This is about the citywide alcohol, but you've kind of presented that you're looking at doing some restaurants. So that's why it's okay to have you share some things.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I mean, and the idea of a sales tax revenue being that's never been our pitch. I think it's also never been something in my experience, you have considered in this decision at all. So I wouldn't think that should be a driver. It certainly wouldn't be something we would promote as a driving force for this decision. But from just random data points, the average fast food restaurant will do about $2 million in sales. A Chick-fil-A will do maybe 8. Chick-fil-A's and like In-N-Outs and some of the chicken places will do like 8 to 10. Good sit-down restaurants can do like $5 to $12 million in annual sales. So, if they're getting a consistent business. So those are just data points. Average sit-down restaurants, Olive Garden might be, or Chili's, 3 to 5. We've got Chili's and Olive Gardens across the country, and they report sales, and that's a typical.
So what would it be when you're saying a good sit-down restaurant making 6 to 12? Give us an idea who that is.
I can't think of any in Utah County.
So there's not one in Utah County. Who in Salt Lake would be doing that?
I honestly don't know many.
I'm just saying, I'll be very open.
Yeah, it'd be something.
$12 million when they're doing $1 million in sales is really unusual, and I'm not sure there's any restaurants probably in Utah doing that. I'm not even sure.
No,
Maddox,
I mean there's definitely ones in Utah.
Maddox might be the busiest one up in Box Elder, and actually Maddox isn't.
I would say the destination restaurants you guys are probably going to up in Salt Lake probably do on the north of 5, 6, 7.
Of those you're talking to, I mean, like I said, this has not been about financial aspects as a thing, but of those you're talking to, what are you seeing their annual sales will be?
I haven't seen a pro forma budget from any of them, but I would think.
Like I said, as a council, this hasn't been. I know there've been a lot of questions about the financial thing, so I appreciate you coming up.
Yeah, and again, from our perspective, we're just asking. What we originally proposed and requested was just a change in this zone. We did not request a wholesale change to the city.
That's what.
And so, to the extent that that discussion happened as a result of this, that's your prerogative, but that's not what we are requesting or need.
Okay, thank you. Brittany, have you been able to answer all you had some questions you wanted to ask staff. I want to make sure you got those.
Those were my questions for staff. Thank you.
Can I just say one little comment? So when Neaters opened up in Lehigh, the owners lived in Highland. And this is a little secret. But
then don't share it.
But we're gonna share it. Because I was on the council before, but we got the direct sales tax from Neaters because the owners lived in Highland. And it was about $12,000 to $15,000 a year.
So what you're saying, and if residents are hearing, if the nexus, so if you have an online business and you've put your nexus as where you are residing in your nexus point, which is your sales tax point is Highland, the city would benefit by that.
That's what happened in the past.
That's what happened, I think, from what. So that might be a little hint to help us. So, council, is there other questions or information? Maybe share your thought process, what you're seeing, thinking, and how you come to your decision. And then I think, if there's a motion, let's kind of think if there's a motion.
Mayor, can I just say one more thing? And I'm sorry to kind of monopolize things. And I apologize to the council if, like some of the people in the audience, said I tried to do a bully pulpit, but I feel pretty strongly on this as a professional. But I want to say one comment with the police chief didn't say. I have the 2023 DUI report to the state legislature here. One of the most interesting things in here, it said reported BAC levels in the highest ranges have decreased, and that's because we changed the law in 2019, okay? Particularly those above 0.15, so our legal limit is 0.05. But it should be noted that the data below are only based on arrests where the BAC was reported or obtained. 47% had no BAC reported, and 13% of the arrestees refused the test. So the DUI arrests are probably not really based on true statistics of the alcohol level in people's blood. Okay, so I don't know how that happens to be, but that's what's being reported to the state. So I think that's very interesting. That's right from the report to the legislature.
You can, if you'd like.
I think it's time that other council members speak besides Councilmember Smith.
Let's you have the opportunity, so let's go ahead and speak.
Yeah, finally. You guys know exactly how I feel about this. I basically want to represent Highland City. I want to represent the residents. We had a strong survey result come out, and we wanted to make sure, what did the majority of our city want? It wasn't just a majority, it was a very strong majority that wanted this to be passed. It wanted it to be citywide, and it wanted it to be a full license. One of the things you guys don't know about me is I work for the governor's office. I'm on the state planning commission, and I was at a state planning convention a couple months ago, and I was actually talking to a city planner up north and kind of discussing some of the issues that their city was facing. And one of the things he said is that I found interesting. He was like, you know what? 25 years ago, our city had restrictions concerning alcohol in restaurants. And all the restaurants built around our city except for us. And in turn, what happened is the businesses that came to our city were vape shops and same-day pay loans. And he was like, and so what we're trying to do to establish certain businesses, in turn, establish us as a city of vape shops and same-day pay loans. And he's like, for the past 15 years, we have been trying to dig ourselves out of the restrictions we placed on our businesses. And, when I campaigned, one of the things I heard the most is, why can't we have nice restaurants here? We have been trying to dig ourselves out of the restrictions we place on our businesses. Looking at public safety, we've heard from our police chief numerous times, this is not a public safety issue. If you look at the stats, American Fork actually has less DUIs than Highland does. And some of these things were omitted from Councilmember Smith's presentation. A lot of things were omitted, that information. Just because you have a dry city doesn't mean that you're going to have less DUIs. In fact, you will have more DUIs, you will have a higher rate of alcoholism, and you will have a higher rate of drug usage. And that is statistics. When you look at our community values, that's why we did the survey. What are community values? What do you want to see here in Highland? And 62% said that their community values was to have this in our city, was to have restaurants. I was elected to represent Highland City, and that's what I'm here to do tonight. I definitely honor the restrictions of the state in which they place upon us. Utah has one of the highest and strictest laws and regulations when it comes to restaurants and alcohol being served on premise. I actually contacted Department of Alcohol and Beverage Services just to go over this with them to understand it. The permitting that is allowed, permits are allowed for every 4,500 residents. There's approximately 44 permits out there that could be used for full service restaurants within the entire state of Utah. And so when they look at our city and restaurants that are applied, they take into account our population, our location, number of permits they have, and they are very restrictive on that as well, along with restrictive permits also. When it comes to serving alcohol, I can go over all the restrictions that they have in place there, but essentially, in order for somebody to leave a restaurant inebriated, it is very hard because you have your staff and your waiters there that are being restricted in the amount of alcohol that they can be served, placed in front of you, the food that can be served. And also, if a restaurant is ever connected with somebody leaving their establishment inebriated and in an accident, their permit will be yanked. So they are very, very conscious of what is being served. When we talk about traffic, Darren talked a little bit about the previous plan, and it was a bunch of fast foods. And so when you talk about the amount of people coming to 6 fast food restaurants versus fast food establishments versus restaurants, your traffic increases. This is from a planning perspective, okay? So if you want to have decreased traffic, you're gonna have larger areas, restaurants versus fast food. Those are just some of the things that I wanted to touch upon. So public safety, not an issue. And if we really want to look at public safety, we need to look at what are the actual things that are causing accidents. Cell phone usage 6 times higher than alcohol rate. Teenage drivers. I mean, they're causing a lot of accidents, and we know this kid right here is probably going to be one of them. And actually, elderly. In Utah County, over the past 13 years, elderly drivers over the age of 75 actually contributes 26 times more accidents than the DUI rate. So if we really want to look at public safety, look at our priorities first. What is causing accidents on our roads? What is causing our kids, if we want to use the kids thing, to be at risk? And let's look at training our teenagers more. Do we need to then limit the age in which teenagers are driving? Do we need to limit the age in which elderly are driving? And do we need to limit cell phone usage? If you look at public health, I actually attended a cottage meeting where experts, actually not family doctors, but actual experts, medical experts, came and talked about this. The director of the ICU and the director of the ER here in American Fork. And I said, hey, tell me your experience, your data, and they use data to say this is not a public health, this is not a public safety from our medical expertise and our area of expertise here, that they would pass this in our city. And actually one of them lived in our city and said, we do not see alcohol-related health incidences here. He's like, but if you really are concerned about public safety, start limiting those fast food restaurants. About public health, start limiting those fast food restaurants because obesity, heart disease, diabetes, limit the addiction of sugar and Diet Coke. So I am just touching upon, if you really are wanting to touch on public health, public safety, let's look at those priorities first of what are the main things that are dangerous to us. And when it comes to alcohol, that is actually down below. So I am for this. I am also, though, cognizant of the harm alcohol has in families. I have a brother who died from this. I have battled this in my family. He has gotten DUIs, and it is very, very sensitive to me. But at the same time, I have to understand and look at the data. And I can't have that fear. I have to know that I need to be sensitive to this and understanding of it, but that I can't, in good conscience, feel like as a government, I need to be the ones that limit the free agency of others. We have a state that is there that adds restrictions, and there's a free agency of those then who have to be able to follow those rules and regulations. So that's my feelings on that.
Other councils, maybe just I'll kind of chime in a little bit. You're going to hear tonight as the council talks is it something we should consider as a full-service restaurant, a limited service, beer only? And I thought, let's maybe go through so the public understands in that conversation what might be happening. So there was and I appreciate Councilmember Riddell. She helped set up a meeting with the Department of Alcohol, Beverages, and Services. Unfortunately, because of some council members cannot have more than 3 together, we had a limit who could be on the video, and we recorded it and then shared it to other council members. That would also be available. But these are the questions that, some of the questions that were asked during that meeting. The first, there was quite a few. It was about an hour meeting. It was Ron and Kim and myself that was a part of that meeting. And once again, this was a meeting that was with the Department of Alcohol, Beverage, and Service. It was their person that was over helping the legislation aspect in that. So here's a question. What is the difference between a full-service restaurant and a limited-service restaurant? And the response was, a full-service restaurant may serve all alcohol types, including beer, heavy beer, wine, and spirituous liquor. Limited-service restaurants may not serve spirituous liquor and may serve only beer, heavy beer, and wine. Another question I think would be important, as you might hear some discussion tonight, is does a full-service restaurant have a bar? A bar license is a different type than a full-service restaurant license or any other restaurant license. The difference, they're the different operating requirements. A restaurant may have a dispensing area, which I'll discuss in a minute, where a bar license is allowed to have a bar and a restaurant license, but they are prohibited to operate in the same room. So here's what is a dispensing area, because we're going to hear a little bit about that. What is a dispensing area in a full-service restaurant and limited restaurant, and what requirements apply to a dispensing area? Generally, a dispensing area is a structure or area where alcohol beverages is dispensed. A full-service restaurant and limited service restaurant, a dispensing area must be located that is physically separated from the dining and a waiting area by a structure or barrier that prevents a patron in the dining or waiting area from viewing or dispensing of the alcohol products, or a permanent structure that is at least 42 inches high and 60 inches from the dispensing area, or at least 10 feet from the dining and waiting area. The next question we ask is, can a patron who does not intend to eat be served an alcohol beverage at a full-service or limited-service restaurant? The answer is no. A full-service or limited-service restaurant is required to determine whether a patron intends to order and consume food at the restaurant before serving an alcohol beverage. This does not require that the food be served before the alcohol beverage. And the last question, we asked a lot of questions. Like I said, it was over an hour meeting where we were shooting a lot of questions, trying to get clarification. How does the Department of Alcohol, Beverage, and Service enforce restrictions of over-service or service to an intoxicated individual? Servicers and managers are required to complete training before beginning work that includes informing on recognizing signs of intoxication. Upon application for licensure, the applicant are also required to submit a responsible alcohol service plan that details policies an applicant has to place or to prevent over-service. And then it goes through and talks about what some of the fines are. And this, if someone gets over-served and goes out and actually drives, you need to understand that accident, they can come back and there's a lot of repercussions back to the bar or the restaurant that services them that alcohol. So it's in the restaurant's best interest to not let someone ever leave if they see that they are a little bit intoxicated, because there's some liability for what we learned from that meeting. So with that, council, is there some other things you want to share of how you've come to that decision and why you might, Kim's kind of shared that she's going to be in favor. If not, we can kind of see if there's a motion or.
Yes, I'd like to.
I'd like to speak after him. Yep.
Okay. First of all, I wanted Kim to speak first, so she's far more articulate than I am. We've talked a lot about this. I can honestly say I've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours researching this. I've talked to professionals. I have looked at every study that I could find. I have not taken it lightly. I have not. It is something that I want to make the right decision. I'm here to represent you, and I want to do that. There's things that I learned that I was surprised. If you look at dry communities versus wet communities, as they're called, and look at the studies, the real studies. In Texas, if you live in a dry county, you are 2.5 times more likely to be killed by a drunk driver than you are living in a wet county. That's a fact. There's one county in Texas that's dry that you're 8 times more likely to be killed by a drunk driver. We have unintended consequences. And one of the things, and I hope we can get clarification, because I do understand we've had more DUI accidents in Highland than American Fork had in a year's time. And I want to confirm that, but the reality is we think that we're dry and we're not. We're just simply not. And we've had an example with a wet business, and that's the Alpine Country Club, and we've not had any problem. I live on the street that exits there. So I live on Country Club Drive, and I've never seen anybody impaired. I don't believe anybody's left there impaired. And I believe they even have a bar there, but we don't have control over that because that was all grandfathered in. They existed in, I think, 74. We came in 77. So we don't have any control over that. But this is not something that I take lightly. It's a genuine set of decisions that I have that are very complicated. They're not easy to express. I know where I stand, and I can give you all the reasons. We can talk about liberty. We can talk about all kinds of different things. But where I stand is based on what I've studied and what I personally, genuinely believe is right for our city. So, Doug?
In some respects, I think that I have a different approach to this than the rest of the council. I certainly appreciate all of the safety data that we've heard, and I have taken a look at that. But ultimately, a couple of things this isn't about to me. This is not about my personal preference to have alcohol nearby. If it comes to that, my drug of choice is sugar. It's absolutely not about the tax base. There's not enough money there to drive a decision. For me, this is and has always been a community values decision. Last year, when this was discussed at the council meeting, my preference at the time was to deny it so that it could come as an initiative onto the ballot and determine what the community's values were that way. That's not the direction that the city chose to go. And so the best I have is the survey. I really expected that we were likely to come in between 50 and 55% in favor of alcohol sales on the survey. And what that would have meant is that I would have been out telling people while I was campaigning that, yes, a majority of people on the survey said they wanted alcohol sales, but if I'm elected, I will vote no. Because 55% was the threshold that I set. For if it was at least 55%, I would consider that evidence that community values had changed. As a result of the survey results, I made a commitment during the campaign that I would vote in favor of the alcohol sales. And I intend to honor that commitment. I think that we need to allow access across our core commercial zones so that we are not having the same discussion again in 6 months. And I think that we need to find ways to meet community desires while minimizing risks. Some of the things that I'm interested in that regard are limiting licenses, ensuring that we don't have off-prem sales, limiting the license density, and limiting the hours beyond what the state allows. Those are things that I think are broadly supported across the council. The draft ordinance that Rob put together included all or most of those. So looking forward to discussing some specifics about what we're interested in, but that's my thinking and how I get to that point.
let me just, I've already said what I think. I just wanted to, just in a very kind way, say I was a little offended by Councilwoman Rodella when she said, I'm just a family doctor and don't have any expertise in this. Yes, you did. And
No, I never said that.
no, wait. Let me.
Let's keep it focused on what we're
But
discussing.
let me just kind of say something real quick here, okay? This expert they brought in from the head of the ER, I take care of his in-laws, so he must think I'm a little bit of an expert. He calls me all the time because I admit to the hospital and asks me about what I should do with different patients that he treats, because I do long-term care of people. The other thing is the other expert that we quoted, the next week in the emergency or in the intensive care unit, he was taking care of one of my patients with a lot of drinking problems who was in critical illness. So I thought I had to smile at that a little bit. Also, I never talk about my credentials, but you know, I graduated in the top 5 of my medical class, and I went to Duke University, one of the main centers in the country, and I have a master's of public health from Harvard. So I think I'm a little bit of an expert, plus I have 42 years of experience. And so I was just a little offended when I was said that I wasn't an expert. So I hate to pull things like that, and you know, I'm sorry. That just upset me just a little bit.
I've got a lot of notes. I won't read them all because they're kind of all over the place. I do want to correct one thing from Councilmember Courtney was that it was not a council decision to not pursue an initiative. That was not an option that we had. So I just wanted to make that clear. You know, people have talked a lot. I've been here in Highland for 17 years, and people have talked a lot about Highland values and what drew them to Highland. And I appreciated Chris's comments because what drew me to Highland is the people. It's the people that I've met and the friends that I've made, and from all different areas and demographics and people who I wouldn't have known before. And that to me is what Highland is about. And this issue has brought out some real ugliness. I think to us personally, it's been difficult, and that's not why I moved here. And I hope that we can do always do better going forward. To the comment that wondered if we thought about this for a minute, I can say that I have literally thought about this every single day since August, like every single day. I've read everything I can. Speaking to older Highland, I will say I've read the general plan, and one thing that sticks out to me there is a sentence that says, so talking about importance and performance of what Highland residents wanted in this city, the most notable item that falls within this category is full-service restaurants. It goes on to say general merchandise stores, for example, are somewhat important to residents, but perform second lowest next to full-service restaurants. And so I have been listening to people who have been here for a while, and that has been what's been said for a while. I also wanted to comment about comments that some of the city council members are siding with the developer. And I'm not going to put Darren on the spot right now, but I think if you were to ask him, he would say that he has not seen me as an ally. Would be my guess. And I have not had a conversation with him since August. So my decision is not based on the developer. You know, in August, when we had the vote, I voted no because I wanted to know what residents thought. I did not have my mind made up. And I was one of the huge proponents of the survey. And my personal opinion is that we did the best job that we could on the survey. And my opinion is also, if the result had been flipped, we would have people also saying that the survey wasn't valid. So I said I was in favor of the survey, and I said I was going to listen to the survey. That being said, that doesn't mean I'm going to ignore some of the comments that were made and the concerns that were brought up. What I'm about to propose tonight is a compromise, which I know means that everybody will be upset and nobody will feel like they won. And to me, after a lot of thought, that's what I think is in the best of Highland. So I'm happy to present my motion now, or I'm happy to present a motion and have discussion, however you would like to proceed. But I have a suggested motion in mind.
Can I ask a quick question of Rob?
Yes.
Aren't we making two motions tonight? There's one on the development code and on the municipal code, so it's not just one motion, it's two motions, isn't it?
Correct. Two motions. We have two ordinances. The first ordinance regards the development code, zoning laws. So those are the three restrictions found in development code, two related to the CR zone, one related to the town center that have a prohibition. So that one removes the prohibition. The second ordinance is the municipal code, one that imposes all of the new restrictions and authorizations of any alcohol licenses. So in some regards, the second one is kind of the more hefty one, as it has all the new regulations, and the first one is just removing a prohibition and shifting everything to that second one.
So we need to make that first motion that removes the prohibition
Correct.
first, correctly?
Let's go
Correct.
back a couple.
And then
So that one's first.
following that, we can make a motion on the municipal code.
Yes.
Thank you.
So as I had proposed it, there are kind of three options. The first one was just to change it for the CR zone. The second one covers both of the zones that have the prohibition, town center and CR. The third one would be a rejection of that. So if the goal is to lift all the prohibitions in zoning and just leave it to be regulated by municipal code, the second option is the motion to make.
I would recommend number 2.
Recommend what?
Starting with both zones.
So Rob, once
Rob,
again,
let's
Rob,
clarify.
motion number 2 removes the.
So the CR zone has two places where it says alcohol sales are prohibited. The town center zone has one place that says alcohol sales are prohibited. The second option removes both of those from the zoning code.
Okay.
And then we can
discuss
recreate whatever we would like to in municipal code.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Are we ready for a motion?
I'll make a motion on the development code.
Okay.
I move that the Highland City Council reject the proposed amendments to the development code related to alcohol sales.
Is there a second? Seeing none, that motion fails.
I move that City Council adopt the ordinance and proposed amendments to the development code related to alcohol sales within the CR zone and town center overlay zone.
Okay, I have a motion by Ron, second by Doug. Is there any discussion or clarification on that motion before we go to vote? Seeing none, do we have electronic voting up? Okay, we are voting on the motion of Ron's and seconded by. Is everyone able to log in and be in?
Yeah, got it.
No, I have not.
Okay, we're still waiting on. So Doug, you're not able to get in. Okay, you will be the last one to vote. Well, actually, we will ask for your vote, Doug. What is your?
Yes.
Doug is a yes. Go ahead and reveal. This passes 4-1. Okay. That removed the prohibition.
So that removes the prohibition, and now we're going to discuss what to authorize and how to regulate alcohol sales within Highland.
So I have a proposed motion. I'm happy to hear discussion first if anybody would like to, but maybe I'll go ahead and propose it if anybody is interested. So just so everybody knows, this is not the motion that was exactly proposed in our council. This packet, this is something that I've come up with trying to address all of the concerns that I've heard. So I would move that the city council adopt the ordinance and proposed amendments to the municipal code related to alcohol sales and allow, this is the part I want to have discussion about, limited service and full service restaurants with the following changes and restrictions. 4 total licenses, limited citywide.
4 limited or full?
4 total licenses. I have a question about the type that I would like to ask the rest of the council.
Okay.
I would like the licenses that we end up approving to be defined by Highland City and not by state code. I want to do this to avoid some of the problems that we had before with state code changing and being inconsistent. So I want our ordinances to stay as we craft them and not be impacted by the state's changes. So I would suggest that. I would also suggest that we limit licenses to the city commercial center. In my head, that means the C1, the CR zone, the town center, and Apple Creek. Basically what that does is looks at the general plan and keeps it all in the city center instead of having it in like Ridgeview over by the high school or in possible development in Sky Estates. I do feel like it's important to not have it just be in the new development because one of the reasons that the developer argued strongly for at the time was consistency, and that what was allowed in one zone was allowed in another. So that's that. I would also suggest we allow no alcohol sales after 10 o'clock p.m. And of course, that zone will have restrictions already as far as what time restaurants are able to operate. No alcohol can be removed from the premises. No manufacturing, distilling, or brewing of alcohol. And then all other state restrictions and any other restrictions the state has would apply as well. That's what I would propose. I've had a little bit of a question in my mind just today about the full service versus limited service. The state issues more full service restaurant licenses than it does limited service restaurants. And there are also more restrictions there. So I actually wonder if that is the better option, but I am interested to hear from other council members on any of that, really.
That again, I'm sorry. It's the full service restaurants have more restrictions than the limited services. Right. More permits, but are there more?
And a more rigorous process, I believe, in order to get that type of license.
I understood, and I wanted to make sure we're.
What you're saying, it's harder to get a full service versus a limited service.
Correct.
Okay. Mayor, can I ask Brittany to just kind of summarize? Because it's really a product, it's like we used to refer to as an
How about
epistle.
I summarize it back? Because
Yeah,
what I
see
understood.
if you
was
understand. Okay.
I had down that you talked about 4 licenses citywide. You mentioned that so it'd be four licenses. We've got to decide if it's limited or full service, has to be decided. You mentioned that that the licenses would only be issued in restaurants in the city's commercial, in the city center commercial, which is being the CR, C1, Town Center, Apple Creek /10700 development, which takes up the Town Center area. But it does not mean it would be prohibited to have alcohol in Ridgeview commercial, Sky Estates commercial, and Wild Rose commercial area. I had down that you also clarified that there are no manufacturing, distilling, brewing, etc. of alcohol is prohibited, including the licensing of a license of a restaurant. There's no breweries. It's prohibiting the patrons from removing any alcohol from the premise. No alcohol sales after 10 p.m. Is that correct?
That's correct. The limited versus full service is something I would be interested to hear from other council members as well as a suggestion that you limit the number of licenses allowed per individual zone.
I believe the other key part of your motion was to define the license types in the Highland Code rather than rely on the definition in the state code.
That's correct. I want to define our licenses in Highland so that they are not changed by the state. Thank you.
How would you define those?
To the existing state, but if the state changes it, ours would not.
As of to date, whatever the existing state codes as of January 16, 2024, if they change, we have to, we approve the change versus it's automatically changing?
Correct, and I would want the text of what those types of licenses entail written into the municipal code, which I believe Rob has suggested he can do.
So the proposal to do that, I proposed basically saying a high-level summary of what it means to be a limited service restaurant. For example, limited service license allowing beer, heavy beer, and wine with no more than 30% of those sales of that type of product, and subject to all of the other state regulations that apply to limited service restaurants under state law in effect as of today.
Correct.
So we have the kind of general definition, and then we incorporate in everything from the state today, but nothing in the future.
That's right.
Correct. And just so residents are aware, some of the restrictions today are it's very difficult to get a license. There are proximity rules within certain community places, churches, schools, and that kinds of things. So there are very strict alcohol laws.
Let me ask you this, and maybe I haven't, is there restrictions on how close two full service restaurants can be by each other?
No, unless you would like to propose that. We can do that.
Okay, but the state does not. I just want to make sure that if there's two full service, that we need to be aware of that.
As a legal matter, the state does not regulate distance between restaurants. As a practical matter, they do look at how many restaurants do you have next to each other, as they have only a certain number of licenses that they issue to the state. So they try to issue it to benefit. It's not they won't issue it right next door. It's just that if Highland has one and Highland doesn't show that they need another one, the state may not issue it, but that's just a discretionary thing. No legal limit under state law.
So Rob, if we allow 2 in the CR zone, which is Highland Mains, do you think the state will grant those?
It'd be up to the state. It's, again, they have to justify that this is a good place to use the couple of dozen licenses that are left here in Highland. And it'll be up somewhat to the tenant, the restaurant, to make that demonstration. We've done the pro forma, we've done an analysis, we think the market's great for this, and the state may say, okay, or the state may say, we'll start with 1, and then come back for the second one. Without, knowing how DABS goes deep into detail, I couldn't prognosticate, whether they'll grant 2 or 1 or none.
So here's some questions. Are you wanting, could all full service restaurants be taken? Let's assume we have this new Highland Mains or the CR zone. Could all 4 permits go into the CR? Is that a concern at all, or do you want to limit the number that can go in any of these certain zones or things that way? As a council, I don't know.
Yeah, I have a couple of things. One is I like the idea of limiting the number of licenses. The statewide standard is 4,400 people for every 1 license. And if we look at Highland at 20,000, 22,000, that's 5 licenses. So I would like to see us go with 5. Limiting how many of those are full service and how many are limited service troubles me a little bit. And the fact that we may have, whatever we decide, let's say 3 and 2 or 2 and 3, and one development or one zone gets that, and then the other zones don't have the opportunity for it. And I like the idea that the full service is more restrictive as far as how more rigorous in how they get it. So I would be in favor of limiting it not to 4 but to 5, and not saying either limited service or full service. They could be all 5 full service. They could be all 5 limited service. Whatever the restaurant is applying for and gets.
Would you be in favor of limiting the number that you can have per zone? So
yes, I would.
What would that number be?
That number would probably be 3.
And I like the idea of tying it to a specific number, like 4 or 5, versus the way that the state does it, because the state does it based on population. And this way, our license count wouldn't automatically change based on population or based on if the state decides to change that threshold. So ours would be under our control.
Well, I know one of the fears, and they are fears, and they're legitimate to a great extent, is you let the elephant's nose in the tent and the elephant walks in the tent. I think it's a camel. A camel.
But the elephant's nose
That's
might be
right.
stretched.
The elephant has a longer nose, yeah. The camel. You're absolutely right. What we're proposing here, what Brittany is proposing, is keeping our control. We are limiting it, and we're maintaining that control. And the fear that this is going to bring in bars later, and no, it's not. Not unless we decide that. We have that, and we're building this a case. We're building it in such a way that we maintain that control. Even if the state changes, we're going to say, do we want to allow that same change? Or are we going to keep the same restrictions? So I really like what Brittany has done here. Thank you.
Okay, so Brittany, if you look now up on the screen, and I think that the public can see up here on this screen, let's look, because this, okay, 4, Ron, you've said 5, but 4 to 5 total licenses limited citywide, consistent with no more. Now, this is, I think, where the council has decided that no more than 2 full service and 2 limited, 2 full service, or no more than 2 licenses. Maybe we just focus on that one, and as a council, where are you at on that?
I guess for me, I want to keep with the survey results. The survey results at I think it was 84% wanted this citywide. They didn't say anything about restrictions. And with the state having one of the strictest regulations on alcohol consumption and permitting, I mean, I talked to DABS about this, and to be honest, they don't dole out these permits, like candy. It is very hard to get one of these licenses, one of these permits, and they're the ones who take into account the population, proximity, number of licenses and restaurants in our state. And I think I would defer to the state on doing that instead of the council and having to continuously bring this back every time we have a development. I mean, with that said, I do like there's a permit for every 4,500 people, the 5 licenses, but I don't want to say that those 5 licenses, a certain amount has to be limited, a certain amount has to be full service. I would just allow full service or limited, just because, again, I'm going with the survey results of what the people wanted, and it was full service. I do want to know, it says no alcohol sales after 10 p.m. What does the state say on that?
Midnight.
It varies. It's midnight or 1 with
Okay.
some limited exceptions.
I would probably just keep it to midnight on that, because I just don't understand the difference between 10 p.m. and midnight. If
2 hours.
Huh? I know. That's what I'm saying. So 2 hours. What is the difference? Is serving at 10 p.m. or midnight? I don't know, since we already know that this isn't really a public safety issue. I guess what's the reasoning behind regulating even further what the state is saying on midnight?
So the reason to me that we would regulate beyond what the state does is because I would rather have us be in control of what this is rather than the state. Whereas if you always defer to state regulations, then as they change, your code changes also, and as we've seen, that causes problems. So I also believe that we should be cognizant of what the survey said, which is why I voted in favor of allowing. But I think that there was enough concern and some good reasons to keep it within city control and place limits. I have zero intention of hearing another proposal from another development anytime, please not anytime soon. Like,
I just am a little worried because it says no alcohol sales after 10 p.m. When we are talking about on-premise restaurants serving alcohol in a controlled environment that's regulated and monitored by a waiter staff that is making sure nobody is leaving intoxicated, I worry that you have somebody going to a restaurant at 10 p.m. and then not being able to serve alcohol after that 10 p.m. and then going to the Hearts in Cedar Hills and finishing out their night with unregulated circumstances. So I think I would change that to midnight, just in order to have a safer environment and regulated environment on that one.
What are the business hours of that zone over there? I mean, are there any restaurants in Highland that are open until midnight? Anything?
All city business hours are 6 a.m. till midnight.
Okay.
You know, my concern would be his judgment. You know, we always talk about the once people start drinking, where's that judgment? I know a lot of people what I've heard when they drink, they try to say, hey, after I'm not going to drink more than one drink or two because I start to get judgment. But as Scott had mentioned, and I'd read something similar, people don't. There's a judgment factor where they don't think they're starting to be impaired. And I think after 10 o'clock, as a council person, there was a joke that you never respond to an email or a Facebook post after 10 because you're getting tired. And I would be worried after 10. I think they're starting to get tired, and maybe their judgment's been.
My husband turned off my internet at 10 o'clock because I don't respond rationally.
So then keep them in that regulated environment
Don't,
instead
they
of
could leave, but they're
letting them leave to go to.
Well, no, but I'm just saying, I think as you get tireder, then you also say, well, maybe I'm not as inhibited or things that way. That's one of the concerns also, I think, with alcohol is there's an inhibition or some judgment calls that I don't know. I don't have a concern with the 10 p.m. I don't know why we really want to go past 10 on serving alcohol. But
I'd like to make a comment. I mean, you know where I stand on this stuff as a professional and as a older citizen of Highland. But I'm kind of appalled that we have a city with 2 grocery stores and 1 gas station, but we're going to have 5 alcohol licenses. I think that's a little excessive, personally. I think we have the right as a council to limit things. I will bring up the point, since 2018, there's been 480 alcohol-related deaths in the state of Utah, even though we're greatly regulated and we have the best BAC in the nation. But there are still people being killed. The alcohol deaths, and I stated this before, have gone up the last 3 years. So just because we don't have them now, I'm not sure we throw everything open to encourage that. I don't understand the rationale there. So I appreciate the efforts of Brittany to kind of put some restrictions in, because there is, there were 38% of the people that answered that survey didn't want any alcohol at all. So I think we need to respect other people in the city besides the 62% that answered the survey. And we do know that there were some limitations on that survey, in that we didn't send an addressed envelope so people could send it back if they didn't want to do it online. And we also didn't put the address that they could send it to. So we put some kind of barriers there. So I'm not sure that surveys is 100% accurate and represents 62. So I agree with what Brittany says there, but I'm appalled that we would have 5 licenses in this city.
Okay, let's focus on that first item then. 4 or 5 or lower, higher council, So Ron, you said 5. Kim, where are you at on that first bullet point?
I'm fine with 5.
Okay, Doug, where are you at on that?
I'd prefer 4.
You prefer 4. Scott, I understand the concern here, and I don't know if where you're going to be voting on this. Where would you prefer to be at on 4 or 5, or where you're at?
I'm at 0.
Okay, Brittany, where are you at?
I prefer 4.
Okay.
It's up to you, Mayor.
I would prefer 4.
All right.
It's not, because we're not doing a vote. This is
I know,
This is
but
to
it's
help
still
get
up to
the
you.
motion
Split
together. Okay, so it's up to the person that makes the motion, and if they can get the 3 votes. Okay, now the unlimited service, full service, as defined by state code, is there concerns in doing limited and full service as part of those 4 licenses? Ron, let's kind of go down. Where are you at on that? Just so we can kind of get to a motion.
Yes, I'm for leaving it open for both options to be available to any given restaurateur.
So you're not really, this line here is not important if we're just saying just 4 or 5 licenses, and it can either be full service or limited.
Exactly. However that's made up. It could be all full and all.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Doug?
I'm torn on that it's true that 87% of the survey responds to that question. came back in favor of full service.
Okay, we have to be careful. When it says 87, that's of the people.
But that's only if we ignore the people who said, no,
Yeah,
we
you have
don't want any
38%,
alcohol
then,
sales.
and so it's 40, I'll tell you, it's 40.
It's 54%.
54% are okay having full service, 46% don't want any alcohol or don't want full service. I'm just saying, and that's how I kind of, so, so.
So it's not a great majority.
It is not. I appreciate Ron's point about not having one zone snarf up all of a particular type. But I think given the tightness there on the survey and that the city is reasonably split, I'd be inclined to split it out.
What would you see as the split? Like
the 2 and 2 that here works for me.
two, what do you mean, two in one zone's the maximum?
No more than 2 licenses per zone, and across the city, 2 limited and 2 full.
Okay. Okay, Scott, you want to chime in on this?
You know where I stand.
Okay. Brittany?
Because of the reasons I described, I think I would say, this is surprising to me, but it's been after a lot of thought today, that I would say full service, but keep the no more than 2 per zone.
Okay, so you're full. Okay, I heard full, 2 per zone. You were 2 per zone. Where would you guys be on per zoning? Are you okay limiting it down to zone?
My thought is 3.
Per zone? That
I'm
means
okay
one
with
zone
2.
could have 3 and it only leaves 1 for one other zone.
That's right. If we're down to 4, then I'm down to 2 on that.
So, okay, so you'd be down to 2. Okay.
I wouldn't limit it per zone.
Okay. Okay, now let's move on to licenses only in the C1, CR, Town Center, and Apple Creek. It's actually 10700. We have it as Apple Creek. It's actually, I think they're being called 10700 development.
The zoning PD is called the Apple Creek Plan Development. Their subdivision is
The
10700.
Okay. I remembered always being called Apple Creek, then I thought they changed it. Okay, is there, Brittany, we'll start down with you. Where are you at on that?
I think that is, I'm in favor of that.
Okay. Scott's going to.
No.
Okay.
I like that limitation. That is
In those zones?
effectively
Okay.
full city to me.
Where are you at on that, Kim? What?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, Ron?
I'm fine.
Okay, so we know that. Okay, alcohol sales after 10 p.m. Doug, we'll start with you on that.
Yeah, I would limit it to 10 p.m.
Okay, 10 p.m. Brittany?
10 p.m.
Ron?
Yes.
10 p.m.?
Yeah.
And then where are you at on that, Kim?
When the establishment closes at midnight.
Okay. Okay. I assume no alcohol can be removed from the premise. Kim, we'll start with you.
Yep.
Ron?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and then Brittany?
Yes.
Scott, I assume you're a yes that no alcohol could be removed.
Exactly right.
And then Doug?
My only concern about that, and Rob, this is a question for you, is whether or not we can enforce that with regard to wine. The partial bottle case.
I do have, I believe there might be an issue with that. It might be a thing of, if that comes up, that we'll have to deal with it if we put in a full ban and decide. There's no specific case law, and so this is a newer thing, so no one's really tried to put in a prohibition and seen how that works against wine. So I don't know how quite that'll play
So your
out.
question is, if someone orders wine and they don't finish the bottle, can they cork it back up and carry it
Under
out?
state law, it says generally a patron can ask for that to be resealed and removed from the premise. This would put a ban on that type of activity and may run afoul of that prohibition.
And if that is an ambiguous case, then I'm in favor of including that in our ordinance. If it is clearly we're not allowed to do it, then that's different to me. But it sounds like it is ambiguous. I would be in favor of that.
Okay, then this is really, there's no manufacturing, distilling, or brewing of alcohol. Kim, where are you at on that?
Yes.
Ron? Now, this
Yes.
is not the motion, it's just to help us make sure we have
I
the
know,
motion
I know.
correct.
Yep.
And then
It's a poll.
Brittany?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
And then what about you, Doug?
Yes.
Okay, then all other state restrictions and other restrictions described in the ordinance apply as of today. And Ron, where are you on that? You?
We need to add the language as of today, and it's locked into that.
As
yes.
of January 16th, 2024.
Exactly. Whatever it states.
It literally
on
says
that
as of
day,
January 16th, 2024.
That's
Oh,
right.
2024.
And I downloaded the entire Utah Alcohol Beverage Control Act today. So
Copy and paste.
We will save that entire thing as a PDF for reference.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Brittany, are you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I am.
Okay. Do we now have our motion prepared to be able to go forth?
I move that the city council adopt the ordinance and proposed amendments to the municipal code related to alcohol sales and allow full-service restaurants with the following changes and restrictions. 4 total license limits citywide and no more than 2 licenses issued per zone. Do we need to put the limited service in here, Rob, if we're just doing full? The definitions.
Someone could still apply for a limit, unless you were
Okay.
just trying to say they're
They can,
limited isn't
so I guess
permitted.
it'd be apply for limited or for services permitted.
Limited service and full service licenses are to be defined by current state law, not future state law, and I would like to spell out what that is. Licenses permitted only within the city commercial center consisting of commercial property within the C1, CR, Town Center Commercial Retail, and Apple Creek Plan Development zoning districts. No alcohol sales after 10 o'clock p.m. No alcohol can be removed from the premises. No manufacturing, distilling, or brewing of alcohol. All other state restrictions and other restrictions described in the ordinance as of 1/16/2024 would apply.
Motion by Brittany.
I'll second that.
Second by Doug. Any discussion or clarification?
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about limiting sales after 10 p.m. How do we enforce that?
That, I guess we saw them.
Is it all up to the servers again? The
I mean,
establishment?
Yeah, I assume it's the same way. How would they enforce if the I guess we could say if the restaurant was midnight and they stayed open past midnight, it would be our police officer saying, "Hey, you're now selling cells."
So are we mandating that the restaurants close at 10 p.m.?
No, I think it's just cells of alcohol. Is that my understanding? Just sells alcohol has to stop at 10 p.m. Okay. Any other questions, Scott?
I just don't know how you enforce that. Yeah.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? If not, we will go ahead and we'll go to vote. We ready, Brooklyn, to go ahead and go up for vote? Do we have ever?
If you want to do electronic, give me just 1 second and we can do that.
Oh, did we not
Mayor.
have it ready?
We will in 1 second.
We have a motion for us. The motion, the discussion's up here. I'm sorry at this time, so this is where the discussion's at. Okay, if you can do electronic voting.
I'll have to do a voice vote again.
Okay, let's just wait. Okay, Doug, what was your vote?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead and reveal.
Hold on, it's not going.
Okay.
There we go. It went.
Okay, that passes 3-2. Okay, so that is now passed. We will now move on to our next item.
We have 5 minutes.
Yeah, let's go ahead and
Yes.
we will take, at this time, it's 10:17. Why don't we go ahead, let's reconvene at 10:25. Okay, council, at this time, it is 10:36. We will need a motion to continue. There are some items that we can skip as we get going. Just got to find my list of what we can skip. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so council, we do need to do 4B and 4C.
Well, before we do, I make a motion that we continue this meeting beyond the 10 o'clock limit
You want to give a specific time, like 11?
until 11:05.
Okay, I have a motion by Ron to continue the meeting till 11:05.
Second.
Second by Doug. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll now go to 11:05.
I'm a nay.
Any nays?
Oh, nay.
I'm ready to go home.
What?
Well,
I'm going to say nay just to agree with Scott.
Okay, so hold it. You did not. We have a couple items that have to be done
If
tonight.
if there are 2 votes opposed, then that fails.
Oh, shoot.
Is my recollection based on the resolution?
Yes.
Because it's 2/3.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Oh. Okay. Okay,
Sorry, Scott.
we have item number 4B, which is the design criteria and standard drawing ordinances. This is a development code update, so it's legislative. And Andy, we'll have you do that.
Mayor and Council, I'll be very brief. We've undertaken a overhaul of our standard drawings and our design criteria to be in compliance or to help us be better in compliance with the pending legislation that goes into effect on February 1st. So essentially, we've tried to dot the I's, cross the T's, because on February 1st, we do have to then tie all of our development review comments to a specific standard in the city. So I'm happy to answer any specific questions. This is something we have talked about in the last 2 meetings of 2023, that this would be coming. And this item did go forward to the Planning Commission on December 19th, and they approved it. But they did recommend that fill on cul-de-sacs be limited to 4 feet, and a second option be added to the standards, that if you can't make that work, that you have to then put a drainage corridor to an adjacent street. We saw something like that on Hawks Landing last year. That's how we handled that. And then they also wanted to require that all utility laterals be tested, so that we don't have any settlement. And some of the streets where we drive down that kind of have quite a rough ride from the utility lateral settled. So with that, we made those changes. We added standard drawings that implemented those requirements, and so we bring it to you for your approval.
Is there any questions? That you
I have some questions.
Sure.
So this is an upgrade from the 2021 to 2024. You made some changes, the red lines.
Correct.
So on page 292 of our 444-page agenda, it talks about if the widening of existing roadway is less than 9 foot in width, an additional 1 inch of pavement thickness greater than the existing pavement section is required. Why is that?
Because most pavers are 8 foot on the tracks, and so to get a really nice paved job, the automatic pavers that are self-propelled pavers that you see kind of are the big paving machines, do a nicer paved job, and they're more even and more predictable. There are a few companies that have smaller pavers, but by and large, anything less than 9 feet, they're putting the asphalt in with kind of smaller tractors and things and leveling it by hand, and so it's a less precise process for the narrower trenches.
Okay, so it's just so they can do it.
It's just
basically
a construction methodology. If you get a big wide trench, then you get a nice even pave.
Now, we've discussed this on the council before, that you didn't want to be messing around with any more sewer lift stations. Do you anticipate that there's any other places in the city that could be developed that cannot have the sewer lines just drained by gravity? I mean, doesn't that eliminate some places? This is a hilly country.
We already, I don't know if you recall, and I know there's so much that goes through the council, but about 18 months ago, we already passed the ordinance that said no more lift stations,
right?
Other than if they're private. So the only place that we had anticipated there might be a development effort was the gravel pit, that had a large, significant area, and that has since been purchased by a public agency, and so at this point, there certainly could be, I guess, a small lot or a small pocket of the city, but we believe that taken as a whole, that the lift stations that we have would serve any developments that we would anticipate as kind of standard single family, standard fare subdivisions, so to speak.
Okay, so you talked a minute ago about the changes the Planning Commission wanted to make with cul-de-sacs, but in the document there was a line that says we're going to remove all cul-de-sacs. I was kind of confused by that.
Remove all cul-de-sacs?
Yeah, in future developments and different things. Did I just misinterpret that? I was kind of confused because I know public safety never likes cul-de-sacs, but I just wondered if that was a move to remove them, or I just misinterpreted
and
that.
I'm not sure. Certainly there could be a wording that that I can't think of, but our attempt was simply to the Planning Commission had been talking over the last couple of years about a home that was built down right next to the Strasbourg Church. And it sits quite elevated above 6,000 West.
Right.
And part of the reason of that is because the city requires the cul-de-sacs to drain out from the cul-de-sac, so from
Okay.
the top of the bulb. And so that, that in that situation, that fill that was placed on the cul-de-sac kind of exacerbated that situation. And so they had been talking to us about, how do we limit that, et cetera, so that doesn't happen again. So that's why that standard was added. But like I said, there was a drawing that was added to make an alternative whereby if you didn't want to lift the cul-de-sac, so to speak, so it would drain out, or couldn't, if you had an adjacent public road, and then you could place an overflow corridor. And like I said, that's what we did at Hawks Landing. So it wasn't an attempt to limit cul-de-sacs as far as the placement of cul-de-sacs, just limit, how much fill can be placed to achieve that standard. And then if you can't achieve that either standards, then you would be prohibited from using a cul-de-sac. But it does give you two ways that you can do it.
Do that. Okay, I appreciate that. So my last question is, so we have the 2021 standards and we're upgrading to 2024. I wasn't 100% sure where all these standards come from. Can you just briefly explain where we get all these upgrades? Because there was a lot of redlining in the second half of the document. And does that come through the attorney? Does that come through professional organizations? I know they referenced, some builders codes and different things. I just wondered where all these changes came from.
Sure, a lot of it. So these manuals that the city maintains are, think of them as our frequent flyer issues. They're the issues that we deal with all the time on the development side. The code does actually reference some broader standards that we also adhere to. And so these code changes in large measure come from our experience in implementing the standards and working with developers. And, the biggest focus, if you will, is because now as of February 1st, when we make a comment to a developer, it has to say, okay, you need to change this item, and here's the city code that backs it up. And so we wanted to go through these standards and make sure that we had the code verbiage in place to back them up. So largely, it's a result of our experience in working with the development community, and also with that increased focus on, is the wording complete with what the requirement would be.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have a question for Rob. We do not, since this is a changing and legislative, we do not need to have a public hearing on this item. So changing of the development code as legislative.
Don't believe it requires a hearing for the city council. I'm going to double check that. Sorry, off the top of my head, I can't remember what our code says.
I'm sorry, I should have asked that earlier to you.
No, you do hold a public hearing on this.
Okay, so at this time, we will now open up for public hearing on our action item number 2B, which is a design criteria and standard drawing ordinance development code update. Is there anyone who'd like to come up and address that? Seeing none, we'll now close the public hearing, bring it back to the council for a motion.
I move that the City Council approve the ordinance authorizing the updates of the Highland City Design Criteria for Public Improvements Manual and the updates to the standard drawings.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Ron, second by Kim. If we can go ahead and vote. Just wait for all the votes to come in, then we'll ask you, Doug, to go ahead and vote.
Sorry, it's updating.
Okay. We have everyone, okay, and there's Kim. So Doug?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead and reveal. That passes 5-0. We'll now move on to item number 4C, which is another action item, a development code change. And this will also have a public hearing. This is you, Rob.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. This is a companion to what Andy was just going through, and part of that conversation we've been having. This is the code update we have to do to our subdivision ordinance in order to comply with the new state law requirements. In short, we have to change the process for reviewing it. We have limited number of review cycles for plats. We have to change who can approve plats. Planning Commission approves preliminary plats, and our new Development Administration Board, our staff and Planning Commission members will approve final plats and final subdivision improvement plans. I do apologize. The code amendments are 91 pages long. It's just what had to be done in order to update the code to match what required under state law. And also, as I was going through it, I found some things that were just a little bit older and out of date, so updated those, same as we did with the design standards, bringing it up to current practices and standards. I'm happy to go into as much detail as you would like. Maybe I'll ask for if there's any questions, and that'll be easier.
Any questions on?
So I appreciate all your work on this because it's a phenomenal thing considering we had all the other contentious things on the, but I think we should just kind of realize that this is the state mandating and taking away the land use authority from the city council, basically.
Correct.
Which is, I think is sad. But at the same time, did you look at what other cities are doing? Did you reference any other places? Or did this kind of, what did you use as a basis to make all the changes besides the state law?
So the basis was state law. Several cities that I work with have asked me to start reviewing their code because a lot of them are doing this exact same thing. A few of the smaller cities have deadlines in December of 2024, so they're not working on it yet. But I reviewed, as part of that, there are other cities that had different consultants working on it, and then they asked me to do a final pass. So I got to review their stuff, and then so I incorporated kind of bouncing back and forth, taking best practices from what I thought, plus what I've seen from other cities who are doing the exact same code updates. So you're right, it is from the state. So it was trying to tighten up those things. So hopefully the council feels a little more confident that we do this right. But
So the Development Review Committee, and you have specific people on that, what if one person fills two roles? Does he get 2 votes?
No, we might have to figure out a different type of
Configuration.
structure for that. We want to keep it at a 5-member because we like having odd numbers, so you have the ability to not deadlock. So we will figure that out depending on how things go.
So I saw in one place with this change that you will, on a lot of these development, as they go forth, it will be reported to the city council, so we're at least aware of it when people come in and they're angry about it.
Yes, and in fact, one of the things I wanted to let you know, we have a public hearing scheduled next week before the Planning Commission. The Workman property, known as the Foxwood Estate subdivision, is coming in for preliminary plat review. So this is your notice that next week, Planning Commission is holding a public hearing. You're certainly welcome to attend and give comments. It's if you know the Workman property, it's a 20-lot subdivision over about 24-ish acres. They're preserving a lot of the interior. There's a big ditch, kind of, not ditch, it's bigger than that, a wash. And we applied our new subdivision, or our new sensitive lands ordinance to it, which has required a lot of back and forth and engineering studies. So that's coming up next week. So that is something we're going to be doing, and we want to keep you apprised of that.
And that is R140.
Standard R140 subdivision.
Okay.
Any other questions, or if you'd like me to go through any of the things that got changed?
I have 2 quick questions, and apologies. I should have emailed them to you earlier, and
You're absolutely fine.
Failed to do so. In 2-2031, and this is actually existing text, but it says that a person may be elected to serve consecutive terms as chair. Do we wish to allow consecutive terms as vice chair also? And if so, do we need to include that? Because the way I read it, since we explicitly say you can have consecutive terms as chair, it sort of implies that you can't as vice chair.
I guess
you're 2-2-203.
So it says the Planning Commission has to choose a chair and a vice chair annually. Then it specifically says that a person may be elected to serve consecutive terms as the chair. It doesn't specifically call that out for vice chair. It may be good just to make that consistent and have chair and vice chair be able to be reelected consecutively. Good catch.
The other question that I have is on 5.1.102, paragraph 2.
Sorry, let me get there.
It's on page 334 of the agenda packet.
Okay, what was the section?
In the, it is 51102, paragraph 2.
Okay.
In the middle there, it says, expressly delineated by this chapter, as well as all requirements established in the city's general master plans and other applicable and usages, or and ordinances. Should that be land ordinances?
That should be land ordinances. I have read this thing so many times, and I apologize. It's a good typo catch.
That's all I've got. Thanks.
Doug, thank you for finding that. How do you find other applicable and ordinances and know it's supposed to be land? I just want to know, how did you find it? You just read it. You just read it. I would have just taken other applicable and ordinances. I did. Good find.
It's the difference between the difference between fiscal and physical.
That is the difference. Thank you for.
I'm just teasing you, Kurt. You know that.
I know you are.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or corrections, Doug? There was a word "and" that I thought was supposed to be "or," but.
Anything you would like me to walk through in terms of the process change or substantive review requirements? We've changed, consistent with the design standards, we've changed a lot of things. I'll say one thing I'd just like to highlight, subdivision bonds. Very exciting topic. We used to require 100%, meaning you give us the value of all the things you have to put in, we require 100% of that, and a 10% warranty bond. We're now requiring 110% for the first bond and an additional 10%, so 120 overall. State law allows us to tack on an additional 10% for administrative costs. In case we ever have to go and enforce it, it always costs the city more to finish a project than it would the developer. We just haven't been doing that, so that's a new requirement to add a little more protection to the city in case we ever have to
Do
go
we
complete
give
a
back the
project.
120%, or do we keep the 10% for administration of doing the bond?
Sorry, question?
You said we're collecting now 120%, 10% of that being administrative. Do we keep that administrative, or do we give back the 100?
That would still go back to them as part of the bond release. It's just if we have to enforce it, it covers our cost of enforcement.
If there's no other questions on this, we'll entertain a motion. We have that motion up there.
So this has to be passed by February 1st. Is this
Oh,
correct?
actually, I'm sorry. We need to have a public hearing
Yes.
on this.
We need a public hearing.
At this time, we will open up item number 4C, which is change the development code to now have the authority go for anything that's already zoned, that is already existing zone, to go to the planning commission. Is there anyone like to come up and address the council on this item? Seeing none, we will now close the public hearing and bring it back to council.
And I'd just like to ask one question. So, we're at 20,000 basically in our population. I think build-outs always felt like it was around 25 to 26,000. Do we have kind of a ballpark figure about how much land we still have zoned for development? I know there can be some annexations and different things up in the northwest corner, but most of what's left is zoned R140. So this would not come back to the council unless they ask for a zone change, correct?
Correct. So anyone who wants increased density or some special exception to the zoning code, the council still has to see that before it ever goes in. So anything that's right now zoned R140, you're going to see the standard 40,000-ish lots, standard lot density, and all of those requirements. In terms of what's left, there's a lot of little infill projects, parcels that are like 3 to 4 acres large, kind of intermixed. Those are what we're going to see, I think, a lot of going forward. There's the possible annexation up in the northwest corner near Beacon Hills, the Longhorn property, gravel pit, though, as Andy said, that's kind of been bought up by a public agency.
Okay, Council, you understood that Central Utah has now purchased the gravel pit, so it's now underneath their control. They'll need to determine on what they'll need. They're going to do it for a retention? Detention?
It's
recharge.
Aquifer recharge.
Aquifer recharge there, so they'll be work with us. And then we have 10 acres up there that we'll need to work with them. But
I
that will
certainly
be
hope they beautify it if they do it.
So,
yeah.
So other than that, but like we said, for example, the Magnolia Estates plat that you proved tonight, that's a good example of kind of what's left. It's a little kind of awkward parcel. They got 8 lots out of it, standard R140. We're going to probably see more of that. You know, the Maddox property that we talked about, smaller parcels kind of throughout the city that'll.
You know, the Buellers have about 40 acres, but that's in the county. There's another parcel off 9600 North. I mean, there's some larger but like you said, the larger parcels, a lot are up off 11200. You'll start seeing stuff come in from 11200 area, I think, up by where the Maddox.
Okay, that's helpful.
But I think, Scott, what your question is, everything, our master overlay is an R140, in a sense, overlay. And if they want to change, they need to come in and now ask the council.
And you did, definitely, there's no open space. It's just legacy, right?
Yep. So all of there
Open
used to be an
space
open
neighborhood.
space, a parkland density, and an open space subdivision. All that's kept in the code just as reference for, you know, future people who might live there, but it just says this is legacy, no new subdivisions, no new zoning. So those are all just kept in for reference only.
And I know we got to be done here in a couple minutes. With there's about 30 acres the state of Utah owns south of Ridgeview. At this time, our master plan overlay would be R140 on that. Is that correct?
Yes, our default is always
okay. Just want to make sure, because
R140.
that's some magic.
So the purpose of this, just to reiterate the point, this plus our sensitive lands ordinance plus the new design standards was really try to tighten up things so that hopefully the council feels confident that staff can make sure this is done right, and anything that's weird or unusual will come back to the council still.
Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. I move that City Council adopt the ordinance and the proposed changes to the development code.
Motion by Kim, second by
I'll second it.
Ron. Let's go
Do you want
ahead
to
and
add in
vote.
the changes from Doug?
Oh.
Yes.
With those technical changes?
Yeah, the technical
Planned.
changes from Doug.
Very good. So, Ron, do you
Yes, I
support
second
Okay,
that.
so you got that, which was also with the changes from Doug? Okay. We can go ahead and vote. Okay, Doug?
Yes.
Okay. That passes 4-1. Okay, looking at our agenda, we can go ahead because of time, and once again, we can go ahead and if we could get a motion to continue item number 4D, 4C. Is that the only 4D and 4C? We have to be continued, and the rest is this communication, right?
I'll make a motion to
and the
continue.
expedited. And you want to also do your motion on the expedited 5A and 5B?
Okay, I'll make a motion to continue all the things that Mayor said.
So that would be 4D, 4E, 5A, and 5B. Have a motion by Kim?
Second.
Second by Doug. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Those are all continued. With that, just here at the very brief, there was some communication items. The item that was down there on campaign finance has already been continued to another meeting. Legislative update, the only thing I would say, the legislature started today. We have, Isabel, are you going tomorrow to the legislator day? Okay, so Isabel will be with us. The youth council, city youth council are going up tomorrow up for legislators day. I think, Kim, you're going to be joining us.
there.
Doug, you're helping us drive in the morning, so am I, at 6:30.
Yes.
And then you're going to meet us at lunch, or when are you going to meet us at?
Yeah, at lunch.
So make sure we have a place for you then.
Yeah, I'll be there hopefully right at 12.
Is it 11 or 12?
12.
Okay, well, they're doing that mock thing. Okay. With that, there is a lot of land use stuff going on with the legislator, Ron and Kim. I know you guys been listening, and that they're talking about they're going to require some zones that might be 6 to 8 units per acre. There's also, we've been hearing, other things coming on legislative-wide. We will have meetings. So if you're on the ULTC board, which is now Ron and Kim and myself, Mondays at noon. If anyone else wants to chime in, those are our voting members. The others, you're welcome to chime in. And if you want to get a link and watch what's going on, you'll get the legislative update from the Utah County League of Cities and Towns at noon every Monday now until the legislators are over. So we just need to start watching that.
And I am
Anything else legislative-wise, you think, Aaron, we need to discuss? I mean, I know that was really fast. We'll have more as we get going in February, and then we'll start.
There's a lot of talks right now. Let's wait till we actually see some things in writing. How about that?
That's, okay, with that, I'll have a motion to go ahead and go to closed session.
So moved.
For the purpose? And the purpose is to discuss
Personnel issues.
Personnel. Okay, is the motion here? Okay. Do we have this as the motion to go to closed session?
I'll read it if you like.
Yes, please.
The Highland City Council has recessed the regular city council meeting to convene in a closed session to discuss the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual. We'll emphasize the mental health, as provided by the Utah Code annotated 52-4-205.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And I'm sorry, we are now in closed session. Thank you for being here tonight. Sherry, it was good seeing you.